Chapter 1553. The pagoda of the divine temple was broken. A violent rumble rang out, displaying all the scenes on the top floor of the pagoda. The broken tower and dilapidated walls made the place look extremely desolate. The Titan Divine Emperor's towering body exuded a terrifying aura. His scarlet eyes and huge body brought unparalleled pressure to those who looked at him. Bufang and the Crown Prince stood on the top floor of the Divine Temple's pagoda. It was a ginseng with dense whiskers that glittered with starlight, emitting a dazzling glow. It was the Titan's heart, the divine artifact of the Titan Divine Dynasty. Everyone thought that the Titan's heart might be a weapon or an object, but no one expected that the Titan's heart was actually a stalk of elixir. No, a divine herb. It was a top-grade divine herb. The energy spewing out of the Titan's heart was filled with an aura that could make one's mind rumble. Its medicinal effect was absolutely unparalleled. The Titan's heart. Soul 13 narrowed his eyes. The aroma emanating from the ginseng disgusted him very much. The ginseng was very fragrant, just like a dish. But for soul demons, dishes were very disgusting. Therefore, the Titan Divine Emperor was full of disgust for the Titan's heart. He raised his huge palm, intending to destroy the huge Titan's heart. He was surrounded by experts hovering in midair. They were all soul demons, and their faces were ferocious and greedy as they fixed their eyes on Bufang and the Crown Prince. In their eyes, Bufang and the Crown Prince were their food. What should we do? We're going to die. We can't escape. Even the Divine Temple can't save us. We're dead. The Crown Prince was having a mental breakdown. His mouth was open, but he didn't know what to say. There was even despair in his heart. In his eyes, everything that had happened really made him despair. The Titan Divine Dynasty was destroyed. The Divine Emperor had become a soul demon, and all the clans were dead. Now that the Divine Temple was destroyed, the Titan's heart would no longer exist. All of this was like a nightmare. The Titan's heart. Only the direct descendants of the Titan Divine Dynasty's imperial family can take it. Bufang reached out his hand to grab the Titan's heart. However, he sensed that the Titan's heart was resisting him. The Crown Prince explained to Bufang, his voice trembling. All right. Bufang felt a little helpless. His eyes fell on the Crown Prince. Hold on to the Titan's heart. I'll save you and leave this place. Bufang said. The Crown Prince was stunned. The next moment, Bufang's Taodai arm landed on his shoulder, lifting him up and throwing him towards the Titan's heart. Grab the Titan's heart, Bufang said seriously. The Crown Prince's heart trembled. He raised his head and looked at the ginseng that looked like a horned dragon. He took a deep breath. Rumble, the palm that blotted out the sky, came crashing down from the sky. There were barbaric glyphs drawn on the palm, giving off a strong sense of oppression. That was the Titan Divine Emperor. No, it was a soul demon. That soul demon was going to destroy the Titan's heart. The Crown Prince felt as if his heart was being squeezed by a big hand. It's useless. So what if I control the Titan's heart? It's useless. I can't escape. This palm will kill me for sure. The Crown Prince was about to close his eyes. Suddenly, the sound of something piercing through the air rang out. Startled, the Crown Prince opened his eyes. At some point, Bufang's figure had appeared in front of him. The Crown Prince's expression flickered. Does Bufang want to block the Titan Divine Emperor's palm? How is that possible? That's the Divine Emperor. He'll die. The Crown Prince exclaimed in his heart. However, Bufang's face was as calm as still water. He just leaped up and rushed toward the huge palm. Boom! A loud explosion echoed in the air. A terrible wind and noise swept out in all directions. The Crown Prince trembled and looked up in disbelief. Over there, the Divine Emperor's palm was stopped and did not fall again. Soul 13 narrowed his eyes and threw out a palm. A figure shot out of the palm and hovered in front of him, looking like a mosquito. Stinky Chef, Soul 13's scarlet eyes flickered with a cold gleam. This chef's talent is superb. Soul 13's desire for Bufang's body is unparalleled, second only to the cursed goddess. Bufong narrowed his eyes and glanced at the Titan Divine Emperor in front of him. He felt that the latter's aura was somewhat familiar. Soul 13. That gave Bufong pause. He thought of Tai Fei, who was killed by you in a flash. Tai Fei's aura was too similar to the Titan Divine Emperor's at this moment. Could it be that the soul demon in Tai Fei has taken over the Titan Divine Emperor? Is there such a thing? How bad is the Titan Divine Emperor's luck? The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. Die! Soul 13 growled. He knew that Bufong had recognized him, but so what? He was no longer the Soul 13 of the past. Now, he was the ruler of the soul demons and all humans. His strength was already beyond Bufong's imagination. He was only a little bit away from becoming a soul overlord. He would become a supreme soul overlord who could kill Bufong with a single thought. Rumble. The skies seemed to be torn apart. Soul 13 clenched his palm into a fist, then pointed a finger at Bufong. He wanted to crush Bufong to death with one finger. The finger was surrounded by monstrous black smoke, which surged and flickered with barbaric glyphs. It was a terrifying sight. Even a void seemed to be unable to withstand the finger and was constantly crumbling. Titan Emperor, subduing finger. The Crown Prince cried out in alarm. His whole body shivered as he saw the scene. That was the Titan Divine Emperor's divine power, an extremely powerful one. However, at this moment, the soul demon actually used such a divine ability. Sure enough, evil creatures like soul demons are really as horrible as the shy Divine Emperor said. Run. You can't stop it. The Crown Prince opened his mouth wide and roared. Blue veins popped up on his neck, and his face turned red. Run. Bufong narrowed his eyes. That finger, which seemed to be able to compress the entire world's pressure, pressed down on his body. Bufong could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Quickly master the Titan's heart. You don't have to worry about the rest. Bufong said. For wheels of law emerged over his head. They were the law of transmigration, the law of space, the law of life, and the law of destruction. With the four great laws unleashed at the same time, Bufong did not hold back at this moment. He completely unleashed his strength. In the face of the Titan Emperor's subduing finger, which belonged to the Titan Divine Emperor, Bufong did not dare to be careless. He did not have the god of cooking set now, so he could only unleash his full power. Rumble. Bufong's Taotai arm burst into dazzling light. There seemed to be streams of light swirling around it, and his mind surged as if to shatter the sky. The divine power. The kitchen knife of affliction. Bufong's pupils constricted. A kitchen knife appeared in his hand. It was not the dragon bone kitchen knife, but it was enough to support him to use this divine power. He slashed it out. The four great laws were attached to it. Rumble. Thousands of knife lights blotted out the sky. It was as if a knife had slashed down from the starry sky. The knife stretched across the vast sky to destroy everything. It went straight toward the Titan Divine Emperor's finger. The knife and the finger collided. Boom! Both of them broke inch by inch. At this moment, the Divine Emperor's divine power was shattered by Bufong's knife energy. The kitchen knife of affliction made 99,099 slashes in a flash. So many knife energy slashed down at the same time, shattering the Divine Emperor's divine power. The sky was as bright as day. The pupils of the surrounding soul demons constricted. Soul 13 narrowed his eyes, and the shock in them grew stronger. For supreme laws, this human. He took a deep breath. When he first saw Bufong, he only had 3 supreme laws of the universe, but now he had 4. This human's talent is too terrifying. He has even surpassed the cursed goddesses. Soul 13 was shocked for a moment. Then, what exploded out of him was pure greed. That's right, it was greed. Bufong's value had surpassed the cursed goddesses. Drip, drip, Soul 13 could feel his saliva dripping down his throat. Rumble. His 10,000-foot-tall body kept shrinking. Finally, he turned into a normal person. Barbaric glyphs covered his body, making him look ferocious. You are getting more and more delicious. Soul 13 said. Have you recovered from your anorexia? Would you like an oyster pancake? Bu Fong asked, panting violently as he glanced at the Titan Divine Emperor. The Titan Divine Emperor's expression flickered. Then, he remembered the oyster pancake Bu Fong had stuffed into his mouth, and his stomach churned. This damn chef. He blocked it. The Crown Prince was slightly stunned. Looking at Bu Fong, who was hovering in front of him and panting, a look of shock slowly came over his face. He's really powerful. That's a god emperor-level expert, and yet Bu Fong was able to block it. I can't believe he can unleash such a fearsome fighting prowess with 4 supreme laws of the universe and his divine power. Sure enough, Bu Fong was not serious at all when he fought me. Why are you in a daze? Hurry up and master the Titan's heart. Bu Fong turned his head and glanced at his disciple, who was in a daze. He frowned and said coldly. The Crown Prince came to his senses. His figure flashed, and he immediately landed in front of the ginseng that was densely covered with horned dragons. His barbaric glyphs pulsed and covered his body in an instant. He reached out a hand. The Crown Prince felt as if his blood was boiling. That ginseng had stirred up his heart and soul. Bu Fong had said that the Titan's heart could save him. That was enough. The Titan Divine Dynasty had now completely turned into a kingdom of soul demons, so it was already good enough that Bu Fong could save him. As long as he, the Crown Prince, was still alive, the Titan Divine Dynasty would have a flame to continue. One day, they would be able to make a comeback. So, he must master the Titan's heart. The Crown Prince gritted his teeth, biting his lips so hard that they bled. Then, he reached out a hand and grabbed the ginseng. Soul 13's pupils constricted. He felt that his body was trembling uncontrollably. How is this possible? The Titan Divine Emperors will have been completely suppressed by him, so it was impossible for him to struggle. Then why? Is it because of the Titan's heart? Soul 13 looked at the Titan's heart in the distance. The ginseng was engraved with patterns, which were very similar to the barbaric glyphs on his body. It was a call from the depths of his bloodline. The Titan's heart must be destroyed. Soul 13 focused his eyes. He finally knew why he could not become a soul overlord. He had always thought that it was the Titan Divine Emperor's stubborn will that was stopping him. Now, it seemed that it was not the case. It was all because of the Titan's heart. As long as he destroyed it, the Divine Emperors would disappear completely. At that time, he would become a soul overlord. So Rumble, Soul 13's whole body was covered with insect scales. The color of these insect scales was no longer pure black. Instead, they were silver black. They seemed to be transforming into silver. This showed that he was close to becoming a soul overlord. As long as his insect scales turned completely silver, he would become a soul overlord. A ripping sound rang out. It seemed to have turned into a cold thread, tearing everything apart as it shot toward the Crown Prince. He raised his hand. The insect scales engraved with barbaric glyphs made his flesh and fighting prowess soar. He wanted to kill the Crown Prince with one strike. He wanted to destroy the Titan's heart with one palm strike. No one could stop him. Could the chef stop him? Impossible. It was impossible. The chef had used all his trump cards, but he could only resist one strike from him. Now that he had even transformed his insect scales, how could Bu Fong stop him? He raised his palm and tore it apart. The void was torn apart, revealing a dark turbulence, and the broken space was thrown into disorder. The Crown Prince's hand had already grabbed the Titan's heart. The Titan's heart was beating like a human heart. The Crown Prince felt that his heartbeat was beating in the same rhythm as the Titan's heart. However, the Divine Emperor was also here. The Divine Emperor, who had transformed into a ferocious appearance, had only coldness left in his body. Sure enough, it still doesn't work. The Crown Prince breathed a sigh of relief. He slowly closed his eyes. I'm going to die, boom. All of a sudden, a rumbling sound rang out. The Crown Prince froze. Soul 13 froze. His scarlet eyes rolled and fell in front of him. He found that what was blocking him was a crystalline arm. There was a faint golden light flowing over it. Bu Fong looked up and took a deep breath. At the bottom of his eyes, a golden divine power liquid droplet slowly dissipated. Chapter 1554. There seemed to be energy flowing on the silver-black insect scales, which were carved with barbaric glyphs, causing his power to keep rising. The Crown Prince was stunned. Soul 13 was slightly taken aback as well. His scarlet eyes narrowed slightly as he rested his gaze on Bufong. "I can't believe you can block my punch," Soul 13 said coldly. Although he had not become a soul overlord yet, his fighting prowess was much stronger than that of a god emperor. Even if the Titan Divine Emperor was here in his peak state, he would probably be crushed and beaten by him. But now his punch was blocked by this chef. "How did the chef block my punch?" Bufong sighed. In the end, he crushed the divine power liquid drop. There was a clack. Like a water droplet being crushed, it suddenly burst out, and densely packed divine power liquid droplets scattered in all directions. They went into Bufong's body. Imperceptibly, Bufong's power began to rise. Rumble. The Crown Prince's jaw dropped. Bufong really blocked it. Suddenly, his pupils constricted. When he looked behind Bufong, he found that Bufong's aura was rising at a speed beyond his imagination. At this moment, Bufong's figure seemed to be taller and taller than the Divine Emperor. The divine power liquid drop was very mysterious. Bufong had always known this. The divine power liquid drop was the saying that the stronger one would become. No matter what kind of opponent he encountered, he could suppress them by crushing the divine power liquid drop. Perhaps this was the uniqueness of the god of cooking's divine power liquid drop. Bufong did not know what kind of realm the god of cooking was. But now, it seemed that he was not someone that a heaven god could compare with. He was definitely stronger than a heaven god. Crack! Crack! Bufong's face was indifferent. There seemed to be golden light swirling in the depths of his eyes as he grabbed Soul 13's fist. He clenched Soul 13's fist. Soul 13's pupils constricted as he fixed his gaze on Bufong. He shockingly discovered that under Bufong's palm, his silver-black insect scales had actually cracked. Did the chef take drugs? The sudden burst of strength was so strong. Interesting. As expected, the chef that I, Soul 13, have chosen. A cold smile crept up the corners of Soul 13's mouth. The next moment, he moved. With a twist of his body, he suddenly disappeared from the spot. His speed was extremely fast, and in an instant he had disappeared. Bufong rolled his eyes. In his eyes, Soul 13's movements seemed to have become very slow. Buzz, her hair fluttered in the wind. As the fist arrived, the wind from the fist closed in. At some point, Soul 13 appeared behind Bufong and punched at Bufong's head. Bang! Bufong raised his palm and casually slapped away Soul 13's punch. This instantaneous collision didn't even last 0.01 seconds. The Crown Prince's vision blurred, and then he found that Bufong and Soul 13 had swapped places. The next moment, a rumbling sound rang out. Both Bufong and Soul 13's figures twisted and disappeared, and they began to collide in midair. Every time they collided, the void would tremble violently. So strong. The Crown Prince's jaw dropped, and he stammered a little. The soul demons around him also found it hard to believe. This chef is too bizarre. The Crown Prince suddenly came to his senses. Bufong was clearly just a demigod, but he was able to burst out with such fighting prowess. The price he paid was definitely not easy. This state should not last long. Therefore, he had to master the Titan's heart as soon as possible. He now had great faith in Bufong. Bufong said that as long as he got the Titan's heart, he could save him. He did not believe it at first, but now it seemed that he could. At the thought of this, the Crown Prince's eyes became serious as he looked at the Titan's heart. Buzz, he grabbed the ginseng in his hand. Ginseng roots that resembled horned dragons coiled around his body, and in a short while, they tightly wrapped around his body. This feeling, it was so comfortable. The Crown Prince narrowed his eyes, opened his mouth, and let out an unconscious moan from the depths of his throat. The next moment, he was immersed in a sea of blood flowing through his veins. Bufong glanced at the Crown Prince. Then, his figure flickered as if he had turned into a golden bolt of lightning. Rumble. Their fists collided. A rumbling sound rang out. Bufong breathed a sigh of relief. The divine power liquid drop had greatly enhanced his strength, but even so, he still could not suppress Soul 13. It was somewhat incredible. Bufong focused his eyes. The two of them collided again in midair and smashed into the distance like two bolts of lightning. The ground exploded, forming a huge crater. The surrounding soul demons roared at the same time. This is really amazing. What's in your body? Soul 13 stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. The silver-black scales all over his body looked quite horrifying. Don't worry. I can feel that your strength is weakening. You won't be able to control this power for long. During the fight just now, Soul 13 had long sensed that Bufong's strength was weakening. The weaker Bufong was, the stronger he would be. At that time, killing Bufong would be as easy as swatting a mosquito. But he was really curious about what was in Bufong's body. No matter what it was, as long as he devoured Bufong, everything would belong to him. Rumble. Soul 13 moved once again. This time, Bufong furrowed his brows. He found that Soul 13's speed had increased. No, it was his speed that had slowed down. Bufong breathed a sigh of relief. He was being suppressed. Rumble. Soul 13's speed was so fast that he tore the void again and again, producing an ear-piercing sound of space shattering. The silver-black scales gave him a strong defense and fighting strength. Rumble. All of a sudden, Bufong was hit. His body was hit hundreds of times in a row, but because of the divine power liquid drops, Bufong, on the other hand, was unharmed. He crawled out of the rubble. Bufong felt a headache coming on. This Soul 13 is really strong. He shook his hand. A piece of fortune flatbread appeared in Bufong's hand. It was a steaming flatbread with fortune energy swirling around it. Bufong opened his mouth and stuffed the flatbread into it. Munch, munch, munch. Bufong began to chew. A gulp rang out. The fortune flatbread entered his stomach in an instant. Soul 13 narrowed his eyes and looked at Bufong, who had eaten a flatbread. Ate the flatbread? Soul 13 sneered. His body was torn apart, producing a sharp sonic boom. He landed in front of Bufong and punched out with his silver-black scale-covered fist, one punch after another, each one powerful and heavy. Rumble. The ground in front of Bufong completely crumbled. A terrible rumble rang out, shaking heaven and earth. Suddenly, Soul 13 furrowed his brows. In his eyes, Bufong's aura, which had begun to weaken, suddenly burst out with an even more violent aura. Bufong's cheeks bulged. Golden light swirled in his eyes. Then, Bufong opened his mouth and spewed out a stream of flame. The silver flame instantly surged towards Soul 13, who was standing in front of him. This was the divine flame. It had devoured countless laws, so its power was unparalleled. Soul 13 didn't expect Bufong to have such a move. The dense power of the laws instantly burned him, making him feel a burst of heat. Sizzle, sizzle. His body turned red in an instant, and the defense of his silver-black scales almost collapsed. Hot air was constantly surging and evaporating. Bufong opened his mouth and spewed out the divine flame. Strengthened by the fortune gas, the divine flame's power was even stronger than before. He was actually able to force Soul 13 to retreat in the distance. The Crown Prince's process of subduing the Titan's heart was about to end. The Titan's heart, which was wrapped around the Crown Prince, slowly loosened its grip. The barbaric glyphs on the Crown Prince's body seemed to become more and more real, and the energy essence of the Titan's heart kept pouring into his body. The Crown Prince felt that after fusing with the power of the Titan's heart, he could now fight the heavens. He turned his head and glanced at Bufong, who was fighting Soul 13. He sensed the power. Well, it's all an illusion. After breaking free from the shackles of the ginseng, the Crown Prince grabbed the Titan's heart, and a warm feeling surged in it. Holding the Titan's heart, He breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he looked in Bu Fong's direction. When he saw Bu Fong spewing fire and suppressing Soul 13, he couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. Soul 13 was extremely terrifying. Even though he had fused with the Titan's heart, he could still sense his aura, which was like a colossal demon. I've subdued it. The Crown Prince shouted in Bu Fong's direction, holding the Titan's heart in his hand. Buzz. Immediately, Bu Fong and Soul 13 jerked their heads around and looked over. The Crown Prince felt his heart skip a beat. This is terrible. Damn it. Soul 13's eyes were red, and his insect scales, which had been roasted red by the divine flame, were burning with rage. Kill them. Soul 13 gave the order. Immediately, the surrounding soul demons moved. The two soul guardians sped toward the Crown Prince. Bu Fong arched his brows. The divine flame immediately hovered around him. He clenched his fist, and his Taodai arm burst into flames. Then, he threw it towards Soul 13. A rumbling sound rang out. Soul 13's face was hit, and his carapace was burned red. At this moment, the punch shattered it. Boom! Boom! It was like a cannonball. Soul 13's figure was sent flying backward. He was knocked flying backward. The surrounding soul demons were slightly taken aback, and their movements froze. In their eyes, Soul 13 was the soul demon who had evolved the fastest and was the strongest among them. Now that he was knocked down, it was as if their faith had been shattered. Soul 13 was also a little confused. Rumble, like a flaming dragon, he soared into the sky. At some point, Bu Fong had appeared in front of the Crown Prince. The scorching heat and the power of the law made it hard for the Crown Prince to breathe. These flames are so terrifying. The two guardians were closing in on him. Bu Fong flicked his finger. The divine flame on his body shot out in an instant. They turned into two silver fire lotuses. The fire lotuses spun and flew towards the two temple guardians. Rumble. The guardians, whose bodies were covered with scales, roared. Then, they threw out their attacks. They smashed into the fire lotuses. In an instant, the whole sky seemed to have turned into a sea of fire. An earth-shattering explosion rang out. With the divine temple as the center, scorching heat waves spread out in all directions. Countless soul demons were burned to ashes in the sea of fire. To them, the divine flame seemed to pose a great threat. Their insect scales were burned and shattered, leaving only their true forms, which were black, drifting in the air. The fire went down. The whole divine temple was reduced to ruins. The two guardians were the first to bear the brunt. They were numbered soul demons, and they were very strong. They were only a little weaker than Soul 13. But at this moment, they were in a very miserable state. Their flesh was burned and broken, and their scales were all broken. Their auras even became a little weak. Roar! The two guardians were furious. Black smoke rose from their backs. Then, their bodies grew larger and turned into a huge, black-shelled savage beast. Soul 13, too, shot out. His silver-black insect scales shone brightly again. Then, they turned into a huge claw and slapped toward Bu Fong and the Crown Prince. Bu Fong's aura was weakening rapidly. Soon, he was even weaker than he was at the beginning. The heaven god's power began to wreak havoc in his body, causing Bu Fong to frown. But as he looked at the soul demons around him, who were being burned into nothingness, he twitched the corner of his mouth slightly. For some reason, he felt a little sour. What should we do? The Crown Prince panicked. Bu Fong's secret technique had ended, and he was extremely weak. What Bu Fong did earlier had completely angered the soul demons present. "Give me the Titan's heart," Bu Fong said. His voice was slightly weak. Upon hearing that, the Crown Prince hurriedly handed the Titan's heart over. Bu Fong grabbed the Titan's heart, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. "Put your arms around my waist," Bu Fong said. Oh, the Crown Prince's expression became strange when he heard that. What the hell? But he did not ask too much. Subconsciously, he hugged the Titan's heart tightly. Buzz, the moment Bu Fong grabbed the Titan's heart, specks of white light began to emerge from it. You have successfully obtained the Titan's heart. Temporary task completed. Host, please pay attention. Yes, Bufong said. Buzz then. Under Bufong's feet, the specks of white light converged into a mysterious array. The array kept spinning, stirring up a monstrous gale. Boom! You want to run away? Soul 13's eyes burst into a fierce light. This stinky chef wants to run away after beating me up? It won't be that easy. Black smoke began to gather around his body. In the next moment, a ferocious beast that roared to the heavens appeared behind him. Its black aura was extremely oppressive. In a flash, Soul 13's figure sped up. In the blink of an eye, he rushed in front of Bufong. The Crown Prince put his arms around Bufong's shoulders, opened his mouth, and a gale poured into it. Looking at Soul 13, who was approaching infinitely, his body shivered. He was getting closer and closer. Soul 13's ferocious face was only an inch away from the array's storm. Die! The pitch-black soul spirit behind Soul 13 rushed out in an instant. Bufong's hands fell to his waist. His face was calm as he watched the scene without blinking. Boom! The remnants of the storm were crushed. The soul spirit rushed down. It smashed into the ruined divine temple. Bam! 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 The divine temple exploded in an instant. Then it turned into a huge pit. However, in the sky, Soul 13's face was gloomy. The two Keeper Soul demons hovered coldly behind Soul 13 as well. He ran away. Chapter 1555. Good heavens! Looking at the huge soul impact, the Crown Prince's heart tightened. The wind was howling, making his shouts a little disordered. Even Bufong's calmness couldn't calm the restlessness in his heart. Both of his legs were trembling, and the frequency of their shaking was quite exaggerated. Suddenly, the wind dispersed. Everything became quiet. The terrible bombardment did not fall. It was as if everything that had just happened was just a dream. The Crown Prince slowly opened his eyes. The scene in front of him shook slightly. After a long time, the scene in front of him became clear. This place is... The Crown Prince stammered. You can let go of me now, Bufong said faintly. He glanced at the Crown Prince, then at the latter's hand that was wrapped tightly around his waist. The Crown Prince cleared his throat and took a step back. He took a deep breath and looked around. This was not the Titan Divine Dynasty, which had been reduced to a kingdom of soul demons, nor was it the land of broken divine temples. He was currently in a rather cozy and luxurious room. The decoration of the room was simple and tidy. This is the capital of the Xiai Divine Dynasty, Bufong said. Holding the Titan's heart in his hand, he walked toward the door. The Crown Prince froze for a moment, then followed. How did I end up in the Xiai Divine Dynasty? That white dot just now was a teleportation array. I can't believe there's such a powerful teleportation array that can teleport me millions of miles away with a thought. Unbelievable. The Crown Prince pushed open the door and followed Bufong. After all, he was not very familiar with the Xiai Divine Dynasty. The only person he was familiar with was Bufong. However, after leaving the Titan Divine Dynasty, he felt a little sad for some reason. The fact that the Titan Divine Dynasty had become a paradise for soul demons was a little depressing to him. His home had been reduced to a kingdom of soul demons, and even the Divine Emperor was possessed by soul demons. This was a great blow to him. When he walked out of the room, he saw tall buildings. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufong walked down the stairs. But there was a flash of light. A moment later, a figure landed in front of Bufong in the Divine Chef Temple. The moment Summer sensed Bufong's return, she tore the void and came to him. She knew that Bufong had gone to the Titan Divine Dynasty, but she didn't expect Bufong to return so soon. The Titan Divine Dynasty was a very dangerous place. You're back. Xiao Xiao looked at Bufong and exhaled. Bufong nodded. The Titan Crown Prince behind her was slightly taken aback. Summer's beauty made him feel somewhat uneasy. This is a pitiful child, Bufong said. After that, he didn't explain too much to Summer. You, Lord Go, and the others are in the restaurant. Bufong needed to return to the restaurant now. Now that the temporary quest had been completed, the system was about to give out the rewards. Bu Fong would collect the last fragment of the God of Cooking set. With this fragment, he would be able to exchange for the last God of Cooking set. The system said that this set could help him repair the other God of Cooking sets. That was the most important thing. The three of them walked along the main street of the Divine Chef Temple. Although Summer was full of doubts, she didn't ask. The Crown Prince couldn't say anything. Although he was the Crown Prince, he was still a little bewildered by the sudden change. They left the Divine Chef Temple. Summer's warship flew toward the Luo family skyscraper with Bu Fong and the Crown Prince. In just a short time, they arrived at the building. Through the warship's window, the Titan Crown Prince saw the bustling Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty outside, and his face was filled with shock. Compared with the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty, the Titan Divine Dynasty was indeed much more barbaric, at least in terms of architectural style. The warship stopped outside the Luo family skyscraper. The people in the restaurant were immediately attracted. When Bu Fong walked out of the warship, everyone burst into an uproar. Owner Bu is back. Good heavens. Owner Bu is finally back. I'm dying of hunger. Owner Bu is back. We have food. The diners, who were dominated by Bu Fong's delicacies, immediately left. For a moment, the whole capital of the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty knew about Bu Fong's return. The whole capital seemed to be in an uproar. The warships of various aristocratic families soared into the sky. Some experts were flying toward the skyscraper. Impatiently, she climbed into the warship she had just bought and sped toward the skyscraper. Creak! Bu Fong pushed open the restaurant's door. Inside, everything was as usual, and it was very quiet. The Crown Prince took a deep breath and followed them. He knew that Bu Fong was a chef. Was this restaurant his restaurant? Ever since the Soul Demons took control of the Titan Divine Dynasty, the restaurants in the Divine Dynasty had long been extinct. Bu Fong, young man, you're finally back. You missed I so much. Nether King Air hot dashed down from the second floor, flipping his hair. Bu Fong glanced at him indifferently and did not say anything. Lord Go lay under the path understanding tree. His aura became more and more profound, and the void around him seemed to be constantly twisting. Lord Go glanced at Bu Fong, then laid his head down again and went back to sleep. It was good that Bu Fong was back safely. The Crown Prince's eyes widened as he looked at everything in the restaurant. It was not big, but it was crowded. That strange guy and that black dog lying on the ground. You're back, buzzed suddenly. The Crown Prince's scalp went numb as if it was about to explode. He did not know when a figure wearing a long black dress with a head full of black hair appeared behind him. The Crown Prince turned his head. The figure had fair skin and a beautiful face, but she gave him a creepy feeling. Bu Fong raised his hand and patted you on the head. You're back safely. You glanced at Bu Fong, pursed her lips, then floated away again to comprehend the power her body had mastered. You can sit anywhere you like. Now you can only stay here. Bu Fong glanced at the Crown Prince. Plop! The Crown Prince suddenly knelt in front of Bu Fong. When he knelt, he threw away all of his previous arrogance. Oh! Bu Fong was slightly taken aback. The eyes of the people around him narrowed as well. Please accept me as your apprentice. I want to learn cooking from you. I know. Only by learning cooking can I get my revenge. The Crown Prince had seen Bu Fong kill soul demons with stinky tofu. Now, he just wanted to learn how to make stinky tofu from Bu Fong. He wanted to retake the Titan Divine Dynasty with stinky tofu. Hades' era and the others all widened their eyes. Who is this guy? He begs to be Bu Fong's apprentice. As soon as he enters the door, what exactly did Bu Fong, young man, do to provoke such a young girl's heart? Get up first. There's no hurry, Bu Fong said. He breathed a sigh of relief, then turned and stepped into the kitchen. He had business to attend to now. He was not in a hurry to take the Crown Prince as his apprentice. When the Crown Prince saw Bu Fong enter the kitchen, his face turned pale. Was Bu Fong going to refuse him? But he could not think of any way to deal with soul demons. Only chefs and their food could discuss those soul demons. As the Crown Prince of a fallen kingdom, he had to work hard to learn and retake the Titan Divine Dynasty. Are you from the Titan Divine Dynasty? Summer crossed her arms over her chest and glanced at the crown prince. The characteristics of the Titan divine dynasty were obvious. They did not like to wear clothes. The crown prince in front of her was one of them. His upper body was naked, and his skin was covered with barbaric glyphs. Yes, the crown prince sighed. I am the crown prince of the Titan divine dynasty. The Titan crown prince said. Summer, Hades' era, the shy crown prince who had just entered the door. The crown prince of the Titan divine dynasty? He had gone to the Titan divine dynasty and abducted the crown prince of the Titan divine dynasty. And this crown prince had cried and begged Bufong to take him as his apprentice. Two crown princes had gathered in a small restaurant. Now, all that was missing was the crown prince of the immortal spirit divine dynasty. In the kitchen, Bufong stepped into the kitchen. He raised his hand and patted Xiao Bai's bulging belly. Then, he held the Titan's heart in his hand. The Titan's heart was glowing. Of course, that was not the point. As soon as Bufong entered the kitchen, his mind calmed down. Congratulations on completing the temporary task, host. The task reward is being issued. Please check, host, the system said seriously. Bufong's eyes narrowed, and his breathing paused for a moment. He could not help but feel excited. The last fragment of the God of Cooking set? I'm finally going to collect it. A rumbling sound rang out. Bufong could feel that a terrible aura was awakening in his mind. Buzz? Attention, host. The temporary task reward has been issued. Congratulations on completing the collection of the fragments of the God of Cooking set. You can now exchange them for the God of Cooking set. Do you want to exchange them? The system's voice rang out again. Then Bufong's eyes narrowed. Yes, Bufong said in a deep voice. As soon as he finished speaking, his mind immediately sank into his spirit sea. The moment the system's voice ended, his spirit sea was in a complete uproar, surging with stormy waves. It was as if waves were rising from the vast sea and rushing into the sky. Bufong's spirit sea was as vast as ever, and there was a remnant of the heaven god's power flowing in it. In addition, there was also a spirit vortex and a hazy fog. The fog gradually dissipated. Bufong's consciousness floated in his spirit sea, next to the God of Cooking's menu. He raised his head and looked straight into the distance. The fog, which he could not see through before, began to slowly disperse at this moment. Little by little, an enormous figure that seemed to be able to support the heavens and the earth slowly emerged from the fog of the spiritual sea. The whole spirit sea seemed to be trembling. A terrible aura spread and filled it. Bufong's breathing quickened. This should be the almighty being in the fog. Is it finally coming out? Bufong clasped his hands behind his back and stood next to the God of Cooking's menu. The God of Cooking's menu began to flash. It flickered little by little. Oh! Suddenly, Bufong sensed that the remnant heaven god's power in his spirit sea had moved. The heaven god's power, which had been suppressed by the God of Cooking's menu, began to stir the moment the almighty being in the fog appeared. Is this heaven god's power going to seriously injure that almighty being? The artifact spirits were injured by this heaven god's power, so they were hiding in the fog now. However, a new artifact spirit had appeared. The heaven god's power had begun to wreak havoc once again. Bufong's face was livid. This heaven god is a little vicious. Streams of the heaven god's power shot out and turned into huge, invisible hands, slapping toward the huge figure that was gradually emerging from the fog. He wanted to slap the latter back into the fog. Bufong was even going to let the real body of his divine sense attack. However, Bufong soon paused and was not in a hurry to attack. Over there, the fog that shrouded him gradually dissipated. Then, the dense scales slowly became clear. The outline became clear. Rumble. At last, the fog was completely torn apart. A head was revealed. The fierce head opened its mouth, and a murderous aura exploded out of it. It was the head of a Qilin. It opened its mouth. A roar rang out. A terrible roar shattered the approaching palm formed by the heaven god's power. Chapter 1556. The roar was deafening. It sounded like the roar of a savage beast that could shatter mountains and rivers. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, the whole spirit sea seemed to be in an uproar, as if it was about to explode. Bufong's pupils constricted at this moment, and he sucked in a cold breath. The heaven god's power, which had been lingering in his spirit sea like maggots, exploded at this moment because of the savage beast's roar. Huge waves rose on the vast surface of the spirit sea, and then the water parted to both sides. It was very terrifying. Rumble, the heaven god's power, wanted to resist, but the great power contained in the beast's roar made it impossible. Hovering next to the god of cooking's menu, Bufong took a deep breath and looked at the huge figure that blotted out the sky. The pressure it exuded was much stronger than that of the 4 artifact spirits. Even when the 4 artifact spirits joined forces, their powers seemed to be no match for this big shot who had just walked out of the fog. It was a Qilin. The scales on its body were dark, but they inexplicably seemed to be glowing. It was reflected in the depths of one's eyes, making them look awesome. The Qilin had fur on its neck and behind its ears, as well as on its ankles, which fluttered in the wind like flames. Its eyes were sharp, and its pupils were as sharp as knives. One of its limbs was a claw, like a dragon's claw, and the other was a hoof, like a deer's hoof. When its tail swept out, it caused the void to explode. Qilin. It's really a Qilin. Bufong stared at the colossus walking out of the fog. Is this the artifact spirit of the last god of cooking set? The artifact spirit. Qilin. The Qilin's body was huge, and as soon as it appeared, it caused the spirit sea to rumble. Suddenly, the Qilin raised its head, swept its gaze around, and rested it on Bufong. Bufong immediately felt as if the world around him had been sealed. Little host. The Qilin spoke. His voice was very loud. His voice was gentle like water, making one feel like they were bathing in a spring breeze. It did not match its fierce figure. Looking at the Qilin, Bufong was a little excited. Yes, excited. The last god of cooking set had finally appeared. Bufong opened his mouth and wanted to say something. Suddenly, Bufong felt that the divine god's power in his spirit sea that had been dispersed by the Qilin big shot's roar seemed to have made a comeback at this moment. Boom! It was as if a storm had struck. At this moment, his entire spirit sea was plunged into darkness. A terrible uproar broke out. The heavenly deity's power condensed, turning into a blurry human figure. That figure was high and mighty. Heavenly god power. Bufong took a deep breath. This was the heaven god's power that gave him a huge headache. Bufong had tried to expel the heaven god's power before. However, he did not succeed. The god's power was hiding in his spirit sea. Even if he were to forcefully erase it, it would soon recover due to his powerful recovery ability. That was the most annoying part. Although the Qilin had shattered the heaven god's power with a roar, the heaven god's power had once again been restored. Moreover, it was getting fiercer and fiercer. The Qilin's eyes turned and fell on the human figure formed by the heaven god's power. What the hell? The Qilin said, his voice booming. Boom! Unyielding, the heaven god's power charged forward again. The aura of a heaven god burst out. The aura of a heaven god. The Qilin's eyes narrowed. The next moment, it opened its mouth. Sharp fangs were bared in its mouth, making it look like a wild lion, extremely violent and ferocious. Buzz the shadow formed by the heaven god's power flashed, trying to dodge the Qilin's roar. However, it had just moved away. A dragon claw reached it in an instant. With a swoosh, he grabbed the heaven god's power shadow's body. I knew you'd dodge, the Qilin said. The 5 claws tightened. In an instant, the heaven god's power felt like it was about to explode. It contains a wisp of the heaven god's will. This heaven god is coveting the little host's opportunity. The Qilin's eyes narrowed. The next moment, he swung his claws. The heaven god's power was tossed high and swallowed by the Qilin. Gulp! The heaven god's power could no longer recover. Bufong stared dumbfoundedly at the Qilin, who had swallowed the heaven god's power in one gulp. He couldn't help but click his tongue. A big boss is indeed a big boss. The Qilin stuck out his tongue and licked it. He seemed to be satisfied. Finally, his eyes fell on Bufong. That enormous head suddenly drooped down, giving rise to a huge clamor. It was incomparably terrifying. We finally meet. The Qilin's voice shook Bufong's eardrums. Bufong opened his mouth. He had a lot to say, but in the end, it turned into a He didn't know what to say. I've heard about you from the vermilion bird and the black tortoise. Among the past hosts, only a few have met me. You're not bad. The Qilin opened his mouth and grinned. Bufong could see the teeth in the Qilin's mouth that were larger than his body. What the Qilin meant was that there were only a few hosts who could gather all the fragments of the god of cooking set. He felt inexplicably honored. The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly as he snickered. Then, he nodded and said, "It's normal." Ah ha 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 ha. As soon as Bufong finished speaking, Kirin suddenly burst out laughing. His laughter was rhythmic, as if it had a demonic nature. "So, can you repair the other god of cooking sets?" Bufong furrowed his brows and asked. This was the main point of his attention. The system had told him that he would be able to repair the god of cooking set once he collected the last fragment. The system wouldn't lie to him. Big boss. Of course I can." The Qilin raised his head. His every move would cause an uproar. "But why should I help you repair it?" The Qilin sneered. Bufong was stunned. He didn't expect Qilin to say that. Why not? Could it be that the Qilin didn't want the vermilion bird, the black tortoise, and the other artifact spirits to come back to life? "I know you're anxious to repair the other artifact spirits, but I'm not familiar with you, so why should I help you?" The Qilin said. What he said made a lot of sense. Today was the first time he and Bufong met. Bufong took a deep breath. He closed his eyes and calmed himself down. This Qilin is a prickly fellow. Ah ha ha ha! Suddenly, the Qilin burst out laughing again. Bufong was dumbfounded by her laughter. Bufong found that this Qilin was probably a psycho. "Little host is so cute. I'm just joking with you." The Qilin laughed, the fluffy hair on his body fluttering. Bufong was speechless. This Qilin is really a psycho. It's not difficult to repair the other god of cooking sets. It's not difficult to repair them to their previous state, but to repair them to their perfect state. The Qilin fixed his eyes on Bufong. Bufong paused. Perfect state? The artifact spirits are still in perfect state? Could it be that the previous artifact spirits were all flawed? Perhaps this was also the reason why the weapon spirits were destroyed by the heavenly gods. Ah ha ha ha! Looking at Bufong, the Qilin burst out laughing again. Bufong almost wanted to roll his eyes. "Little host, do you think the vermilion bird and the others were in perfect state before? Why am I the big boss? Because I am complete. They are all flawed, incomplete. But even if they are complete, I'm still the big boss," the Qilin said with a sideways glance. All of a sudden, the Qilin raised his hoof, which was as huge as a house, and slammed it down on Bufong. Then, he tapped Bufong's head as if he had lifted a heavy object. It was like a drop of water falling on the surface of a lake on a mirror. Circles of ripples spread out. In an instant, dense information poured into Bufong's mind. The information seemed to fill his head to the point of bursting. This is the repair method, the complete repair method of the artifact spirit. I hope little host can surprise me, the Qilin said with a smile. After saying that, he lay in the middle of the spirit sea. He coiled up and fell asleep. The fluff on his body was still burning like fire. This Qilin has a personality. Bufong frowned. The swelling feeling in his mind made him take a deep breath. He glanced at the Qilin, who was lying in the spirit sea. No matter how he urged it, it didn't move. With a thought, Bufong withdrew from the spirit sea. The heaven god's power was swallowed by the Qilin. Now, Bufong's spirit sea had returned to a stable state. In the kitchen, Bufong opened his eyes. There seemed to be a storm brewing in his eyes. His vision was a little blurry. Suddenly, Bufong's eyes moved and rested on the god of cooking set in front of him, which was emitting a strange aura. In front of Bufong, a white array hovered around it. It was formed by thousands of light dots. It was somewhat similar to a teleportation array, but some different patterns led to a completely different function. Was inside the array, a rumbling sound rang out. Then, there seemed to be something slowly rising from the array. There seemed to be an invisible roar of a beast, which was deafening and incessant. A terrible wind was blowing, dazzling and dazzling. Bufong's robe flapped noisily as the wind blew against him. Bufong raised his hand, slightly bending his arm to block in front of him. Finally, Bufong clearly saw the object floating out of the array. It was the last god of cooking set. Bufong's pupils shrank, and his face changed. He held his breath. Bufong stared at the object in the array. Thousands of dazzling golden lights quietly dispersed. Then, it turned into an ordinary ladle. That's right, it was a ladle. The semicircular surface was connected to the straight handle, which was made of a unique wood. That wood had a strange pattern. With a closer look, one could see a cute Qilin head carved on it. Why was it cute? In fact, without that light, it was just an ordinary ladle. Ladle, Bufong's heart thumped. He slightly opened his mouth. A chef couldn't live without a kitchen knife and ladle. The kitchen knife was used to process the ingredients, while the ladle was used to touch the ingredients during the cooking process. Its importance was self-evident. He raised his hand. Bufong suddenly grabbed the ladle's handle. Boom! An invisible wave of energy instantly spreading to Bufong's entire body. Bufong only felt that the cells in his body were boiling. His blood was boiling, and his heart had an impulse to roar. His emotions at this moment were actually affected by this ladle. Not the same, completely different. Bufong's breathing became rapid. Beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. This last god of cooking set gave him a completely different feeling. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife couldn't give him this feeling, and neither could the vermilion robe. This last god of cooking set was affecting Bufong's emotions. As long as Bufong held this ladle, his emotions would involuntarily become strange. It was as if he had an impulse to laugh out loud. Laughter seemed to echo in his ears. Ah ha 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 ha. The demonic laughter made Bufong want to imitate it and laugh. Bufong covered his mouth with his hand, and his eyes widened. Holding this ladle, he felt as if he was possessed by an artifact spirit. He felt that the level of his cooking skills had suddenly risen to a new level. His mind, spirit, and energy were about to boil. There were many things he didn't understand before, but they were cleared in an instant. Two fingers overlapped, shaking the ladle's handle, making it spin in Bufong's hand. The last god of cooking set was finally in his hands. At this moment, Bufong really wanted to laugh. But a sharp pain arose in his head. The system's serious voice echoed in Bufong's head. A moment later, the introduction of this ladle flooded his mind. Congratulations to the host. You've obtained the god of cooking set, Qilin Reincarnation Ladle. Chapter 1557. Qilin Transmigration Ladle. The system's serious voice rang in Bufong's head. That voice seemed to be reverberating unceasingly, spreading majestically. Bufong could not help but take a deep breath. He had to admit that the name was really domineering. It was quite similar to the Qilin. Of course, that was without mentioning the Qilin's demonic laughter that made Bufong speechless. Holding the simple ladle in his hand, Bufong felt an aura that was about to burst out of his chest. It made Bufong feel as if his body was filled with infinite power. This should be an illusion. Could it be that if he was given a ladle, he could pry open the sky? Bufong weighed the ladle in his hand. It was a small ladle and looked rather plain. The ladle was dark in color, and other than the handle, the rest of the ladle was made of a strange mineral. The mineral was pitch black, causing the ladle to be pitch black as well. It was the last piece of the god of cooking set. According to the Qilin, there were not many hosts who could gather all the fragments of the god of cooking set and summon this ladle. Bufong did not know if Mu Hongzhi had been summoned, but even if he had failed. He played with the ladle for a while. The ladle gave Bufong a feeling that he could control it like his own arm, as if it had merged with his consciousness and grown out his arm. Bufang could not wait to cook now. However, he suppressed the impulse. After all, he had more important things to do now. That was to repair the god of cooking set. He had to summon Nicholas, Mulberry, the black turtle, and the white tiger. Bufang felt so lonely without them. Now that there was a Qilin in Bufang's spirit sea, it would be very lively if the other artifact spirits returned as well. Bufang's head was a little swollen. The Qilin had imparted the method to repair the god of cooking set into his mind. His mind was calm. Streams of light flashed in front of Bufang's eyes. Bufang was reading the method of repairing the suit given to him by the Qilin. However, the more he read, the stranger Bufang's expression became. This repair method seems a little. The original artifact spirit was flawed. If it was a complete artifact spirit, it wouldn't have been destroyed by a heavenly god. So, in order to make the artifact spirits whole, I need to guide them through the supreme laws of the universe to the place where the artifact spirits sleep and wake them up. Bufang took a deep breath. Where was the sleeping place of the artifact spirit? The fog in the spirit sea? It shouldn't be. Bufang frowned and fell in a deep thought. He wanted to ask the system, but according to the system's nature, it probably wouldn't give Bufang an explanation. From the looks of it, repairing the god of cooking set was going to be a long time coming. However, it wasn't a complete restoration. It didn't seem that troublesome to restore them to their original state. Bufang's eyes lit up. Bufang stood still. According to the method described by Boss Qilin, his mind immediately sank into the spirit sea. Specks of white light floated out like fireflies and spread in all directions. The bright kitchen became dark in an instant, and only white light could be seen dancing in the air. The god of cooking's menu in the spirit sea made a rustling sound as if the pages were about to turn. The true form of his divine sense floated out of Bufang's spirit sea and hovered over Bufang's head. Buzz, spirit energy, gushed out of Bufang's mouth. The law of transmigration emerged. Behind the true form of his divine sense, a savage beast seemed to open its eyes. Boom! An ancient aura erupted. The next moment, beams of light shot up into the sky from under Bufang's body. A familiar aura spread out from them. Bufang's mind flickered. Around him, the broken god of cooking set emerged in an instant. The cracked dragon bone kitchen knife, the broken white tiger heaven stove, the torn vermilion robe, and the cracked black turtle constellation wok. Swish, the law of transmigration seemed to have turned into a stagnant liquid. The liquid poured down and immediately enveloped the god of cooking's kitchen tools. Buzz, light flashed faintly. In a short while, the cracks and gaps in the sets were repaired. The law of transmigration was operating. In Bufang's eyes, he seemed to see a giant beast standing in the vast world, roaring. Under the nourishment of the law of transmigration, the gaps in the kitchen tools were repaired in an instant. On the dragon bone kitchen knife, the kitchen knife, which was full of cracks, was now unscathed. The vermilion robe was brand new, fluttering in the wind. The holes in the black turtle constellation wok were also repaired. The white tiger heaven stove, which had been broken in two, slowly healed. Boom! A series of rumbling sounds rang out. The god of cooking set was immediately wrapped in a warm light, hovering around Bufang's body. The corners of Bufang's mouth curved slightly as he looked at these sets with a nostalgic look. A familiar feeling washed over him, and Bufang heaved a sigh of relief. He raised his hand. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife shot over, hovering in Bufang's hand as it spun and twirled. Swish! The vermilion robe fluttered, wrapping Bufang's body. Then it wrapped around his waist. The striped red and white vermilion robe made Bufang's aura more prominent. His palm stroked the black turtle constellation wok and the white tiger heaven stove. The familiar feeling made Bufang's sharp eyes slightly warm. The god of cooking said it was back. Anyway, the set was back. But Bufang sighed. The artifact spirits had yet to return. If he wanted the artifact spirits to return, he would have to go to the so-called place where the artifact spirits slumbered and wake them up. Otherwise, the artifact spirits would probably be slumbering forever. He put away the god of cooking set. However, when Bufong wanted to put away the Qilin transmigration ladle, he found that he couldn't. Oh, Bufong froze. Unless it's the white tiger heaven stove, the other god of cooking sets can't be retrieved in their complete state. The Qilin's gentle voice rang out in Bufong's head. Ha ha! Then, the Qilin's devilish laughter rang out. So that's how it is. Bufong looked at the ladle in his hand, feeling a headache coming on. Would he have to hold the ladle all the time? He put the ladle on his waist. The ribbon of the vermilion robe hung down, tying the ladle. It was quite suitable. However, the ladle on his waist looked a little strange. Would he have to carry the complete black turtle constellation walk on his back? It would affect his image. If he stood up straight in a battle, his enemies would laugh at him. Bufong rubbed his head. Then he stopped thinking about it. Little host, you're actually not unfamiliar with the place where the weapon spirit hibernates. However, it will be an extremely dangerous place for little host. Many hosts have fallen there and never got up again. The Qilin said. His words made Bufong nervous all of a sudden. It seemed to be very scary, a familiar place. Could it be the Netherworld? Or the Heaven Chief Realm? Or the Hidden Dragon Continent? Bufong couldn't figure it out. After putting away the god of cooking sets, he walked out of the kitchen. The knot in his heart had been untied, and Bufong felt a little refreshed. The god of cooking sets had made Bufong's cooking skills more and more perfect. Oh, as soon as he walked out of the kitchen, all eyes were fixed on him. At some point, the restaurant was already full of people. Luo Sanyang, the Shy Crown Prince, the Titan Crown Prince, Yu, Hades Era, and the heads of other aristocratic families who had received the news had all gathered, filling up the restaurant. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw Bufong. Bufong had returned from the Titan Divine Dynasty alive. This was an important piece of news. The Titan Divine Dynasty seemed to be isolated from the rest of the world. Whether it was the Shai Divine Dynasty or the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty, all the spies they had planted in the Titan Divine Dynasty were wiped out. Therefore, the fact that Bufong could return alive from the Titan Divine Dynasty became more and more important. Of course, many people also learned that Bufong had abducted a crown prince from the Titan Divine Dynasty. They might get more information if they asked the crown prince. However, many people still focused on Bufong, because the crown prince didn't want to talk at all. Mr. Bu, Owner Bu, you're back. Owner Bu, is the Titan Divine Dynasty exciting? A group of people chattered, their hearts full of curiosity. Bufong didn't seem to expect that there were so many people in the restaurant. He furrowed his brows. Bufong glanced at the crowd, then asked them to leave. The restaurant was closed today, and he drove all the people out. Outside the restaurant, the heads of the aristocratic families who were driven out hesitated for a moment, then lined up again and waited in front of the restaurant. Bufong looked at the Titan Crown Prince. The latter looked hopefully at Bufong. Do you want me to take you as an apprentice chef? That's not impossible, Bufong said. The Titan Crown Prince opened his mouth, and his breathing suddenly stopped. I want revenge, he said. The Titan Crown Prince asked. His request was very simple, but he knew very well how difficult it would be to fulfill it. Even the Divine Emperor's body had been taken over. For him, this was simply a nightmare. There's no hurry. Bufong breathed a sigh of relief. Sooner or later, Bufong would get back at the Titan Divine Dynasty. Of course, he couldn't swallow this loss in vain. Bufong handed the Titan's heart to the Crown Prince. It belonged to the Crown Prince in the first place. The Crown Prince glanced at the Titan's heart, gritted his teeth, and pushed it back to Bufong. His meaning was clear. If Bufong needed the Titan's heart, the Crown Prince would give it to him as a gift. The Titan's heart was the Titan Divine Dynasty's divine artifact, but he had given it up. How much perseverance and hatred did he have to bear to do this? Of course, no one present knew that the ginseng in Bufong's hand was the legendary Titan's heart. The Titan Crown Prince stayed in the restaurant for the time being. The Shy Crown Prince and the Titan Crown Prince looked at each other. Since they were both Crown Princes, they naturally wanted to compete with each other. You sat next to Lord Go, cultivating. The Titan Crown Prince did not dare to act presumptuously in the restaurant. He found a restaurant mysterious and strange. Except for that narcissistic clown, who was a little weak, the others were extraordinary. Whether it was the black dog lying on the ground, the cold, long-haired beauty, or even the shy crown prince beside him, their auras were very strong. This little restaurant was not ordinary. The shy divine dynasty was indeed full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Late at night, Bufong left the restaurant. He entered the palace. Since he had encountered the matter of the Titan divine dynasty, he naturally had to tell them. There was no need to hide such a thing. Bufong entered the palace. They talked all night. When the sky turned white, Bufong left the palace. The moment Bufong left the imperial palace, the shy divine emperor issued an emergency summon. Hundreds of officials entered the court. The heads of the aristocratic families also entered the court solemnly. After the morning court, the whole shy divine dynasty entered a state of war. A terrible news spread out of the shy divine dynasty, shocking the whole dynasty. Disastrous news. The Titan divine dynasty has completely become a kingdom of soul demons, and the Titan divine emperor has fallen. The Titan divine dynasty. The whole divine dynasty was shrouded in darkness, and a dark aura pervaded the air, turning the world blood red. Dilapidated buildings, dilapidated houses, and skeletons littered the ground. Among the skeletons, black balls were beating like hearts. Countless black balls covered the entire land of the divine dynasty. It was a shocking sight. In the starry sky outside the Titan divine dynasty, several bone warships that blotted out the sky were as huge as planets. Countless soul demons stood on the bone warship. Black smoke billowed into the sky, and a fierce aura towered into the sky. The insect scales on Soul 13's body were getting closer to silver, and the black light was getting lesser and lesser. He stood at the prow of the bone warship and glanced into the distance with his scarlet eyes. He grinned, and a terrible aura filled the air. That stinky chef has escaped. I'm afraid this chaotic universe will soon know that the Titan divine dynasty has become a kingdom of soul demons. In that case, instead of waiting to be besieged by them, it's better to strike first. While these stupid humans are not reacting, I'll give them a head-on blow. That damn chef won't be able to escape. Soul 13's back suddenly split open, and a pair of insect wings grew out with a cracking sound. Chapter 1558. The Titan Divine Dynasty had turned into a kingdom of soul demons. This news shocked the entire Chaosverse. Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard the news. Some even thought it was a joke. How could a divine dynasty with so many people turn into a kingdom of soul demons? Besides, although the Titan Divine Dynasty was slightly weaker among the three divine dynasties, it was, after all, a divine dynasty with many great worlds. How could it be destroyed so easily? Moreover, the Titan Divine Emperor had fallen. Why hadn't this news spread out? The shy Divine Emperor even sent the news to the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty's Empress. He talked with her for a long time, but no one knew the content of their conversation. In short, the entire shy Divine Dynasty entered a state of war. All the aristocratic families had sent their experts to join the Divine Dynasty's army. Outside the Divine Dynasty, source stones were piled up one after another. A huge defensive formation was constructed, and as it activated, a loud rumbling sound could be heard. The great worlds under the Shy Divine Dynasty's banner were also in a state of war. Moreover, the upper echelons of many great worlds had transferred their experts to the Divine Dynasty's capital. In just a few days, many outsiders came to the Shy Divine Dynasty's capital. These outsiders were all experts from other great worlds. Every outsider had gone through a strict inspection. This was to prevent soul demons from disguising as humans and sneaking into the capital. The Dragon Valley was the Shy Divine Dynasty's great world, and the Dragon Valley's upper echelons had also been transferred there. The Shy Divine Dynasty had activated its nation-protecting array, so it was safe inside. This was also to preserve the seeds of the various great worlds. For a moment, the capital of the Xiaoyi divine dynasty became very lively. All kinds of creatures could be seen everywhere. There were beings with dragon heads and human bodies walking with their hands clasped behind their backs. There were people who were born with two arms talking. The situation suddenly became turbulent. Of course, no matter how turbulent the situation was, it had little impact on Bufang. He returned to his normal life. Cooking, opening the shop, closing the shop. The Titan Crown Prince had officially become the restaurant's apprentice. It had been a long time since Bufang had accepted an apprentice. This apprentice was the most powerful one out of all his apprentices. The Titan Crown Prince showed a strong interest in cooking. That kind of craziness surprised Bufang. Perhaps hatred had spurred the Titan Crown Prince's interest in cooking, but it was difficult for this interest to translate into his culinary skills. After all, learning how to cook was not something that could be done overnight. In the kitchen, wearing the chef robe provided by Bufang, the Crown Prince was cutting the vegetables in a flurry. Because of his high cultivation base, Bufang had high requirements for him. He chopped vegetables until he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. Bufang was very strict with the ingredients he cut out. The other side, Bufang was cooking expressionlessly. The black turtle constellation walk and the white tiger heaven stove collided, and the sound of metal clanging rang out incessantly. Flames burst out from the black turtle constellation walk, soaring into the sky. The flames surged, emitting a scorching heat and fragrance. Bufang held an ordinary spoon in his hand. That was the Qilin transmigration ladle. When he was cooking, the dish seemed to be covered with a mysterious coat. Moreover, Bufang's control over the dish and the wok had reached a very precise level. His divine sense could pass through the spatula and move around the dish in detail. The feeling the spatula gave Bufang was very clear. He shook the wok. The spatula and the black turtle constellation wok collided, making a clanging sound. The flames were also surging. The dishes tumbled, making sizzling sounds. On the stove, there was a clean blue and white porcelain plate. He shook the wok, and the steaming dishes fell into the spatula. With a flip of the spatula, the dishes were poured into the blue and white porcelain plate. The spatula was lifted, and the dishes bloomed like flowers. Steam surged, and a dense light spread. It was a beautiful scene. In the distance, the Crown Prince was dumbfounded. It turned out that cooking was really a skill. Bufang walked out of the kitchen with the dishes. Ding! The bell on the kitchen door curtain suddenly rang. The atmosphere in the restaurant was harmonious. Everyone was chatting, talking about the recent situation. Of course, it was very comfortable to eat delicious food while talking about the situation. In a seat, a plain-looking old man sat quietly. Bufang walked over and placed the dishes in front of him. The steaming hot air made the old man's eyes a little blurry. Bufang took out a jar of wine. It was the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew. Of course, as Bufang's cooking level improved, the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew had become extraordinary. Swish! The cool wine was poured into a cup. Bufang pushed the cup to the old man. "Try this wine. It tastes pretty good," Bufang said. The old man smiled gently, his face full of wrinkles. He picked up the wine cup, and with a slurp, he poured all the wine into his mouth. "Good wine. Thank you for your praise, Your Majesty." Bufang's face was expressionless. He was already used to this kind of praise. "Good wine, good food. It would be great if your restaurant could stay open in the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty's capital. With such a leisurely life, perhaps I can live a leisurely life after I abdicate the throne in the future." The Xiaoyi Divine Emperor narrowed his eyes like crescent moons. He seemed to be reminiscing. "Unfortunately, the situation is beyond our control," the Xiaoyi Divine Emperor sighed. "The situation is beyond our control. Is the situation really so grim?" Bufang focused his eyes and glanced at the Divine Emperor. "The immortal spirit Divine Dynasty has sent us a message. The Titan Soul demons have surrounded several great worlds under its rule. After a fierce battle, all the great worlds of the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty fell." The Divine Emperor took another sip of wine. For an old man like him, who had experienced the vicissitudes of life, a cup of wine was the taste of his life. He enjoyed the refreshing feeling of the wine in his throat. Bufong did not say anything. He had warned the Divine Emperor that those soul demons were very strong, especially Soul 13. This was especially true for Soul 13. Even Bufong, who had crushed the divine power liquid drop, could only fight him evenly. It's okay. There are many experts in the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty. There's no need to worry. The Divine Emperor of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty is an empress, and her strength is not weaker than mine. Besides, there is more than one Emperor-level expert in the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty. The Divine Emperor said, "The Lord of Phoenix in the Phoenix Nest is also an Emperor-level expert." The Lord of Phoenix, Bufong's pupils constricted. The Dragon Valley of the Xiai Divine Dynasty and the Phoenix Nest of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty. A long time ago, the Phoenix Nest belonged to the Xiai Divine Dynasty's sphere of influence. Later, the Phoenix Nest was divided and belonged to the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty. Of course, the war now was not a war between the divine dynasties, but a war of survival for the living beings of the chaotic universe. The two divine dynasties would inevitably unite against a common enemy. The Divine Emperor tapped his finger on the table. He glanced at Bufong and pondered for a moment. Those soul demons must know that you have returned and that their information has been exposed, so they have taken the initiative to attack. The army of soul demons should be approaching the Xiai Divine Dynasty by now. They have split into two groups. Bufong was stunned. Those soul demons are really arrogant. You can say that. Soul 13 did not appear in the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty's war. The Empress of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty has killed many numbered soul demons, but she failed to force him out. This means that Soul 13 should have come to the Xiai Divine Dynasty, the Divine Emperor said. At the mention of this, his face became much more serious. His target should be you. The Divine Emperor took a deep breath and drained the wine in his cup. His target is me. Bufong narrowed his eyes. Not only him, but also you. Soul 13 has been coveting my body and used for too long. Nethery's identity was not ordinary. As long as you completely fuse with that dead woman, you will be able to obtain the body of a heaven god. However, since the war in the Titan Divine Dynasty, Soul 13's main target may still be me. After all, he has comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. This kind of talent is simply unparalleled. It's fine. Let him come. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly. After completing the task, his reward was not only a ladle, but also a drop of the god of cooking's divine power liquid drop. If he met Soul 13 again, it was hard to say who would be the one torturing the other. Bufong drank a cup of wine, stood up, and said goodbye to the Divine Emperor. Then, he turned and stepped into the kitchen again. Lying under the path understanding tree, Lord Go raised his eyes slightly, glanced at the Divine Emperor, who was drinking and eating, and yawned. The Divine Emperor focused his eyes and glanced at Lord Go. His heart was cold. This dog is getting stronger and stronger. The pressure emanating from him makes him look like a dormant beast. Lord Go rested his paw on the heaven god's bone. The bone, which was covered with veins, had dimmed a lot at this moment. The energy in it seemed to be absorbed by Lord Go. Withdrawing his gaze, the Divine Emperor took a deep breath and continued to drink, savoring the rare silence. His favorite thing now was to hide his identity, come to Bufong's restaurant, drink, and eat. Rumble. All of a sudden, the moment the Divine Emperor picked up a dish with his chopsticks and stuffed it into his mouth, his eyes snapped open. The whole capital of the Divine Dynasty seemed to be shaking at this moment. Oh, what's happening? What's going on? Why is the capital shaking? Has the war begun? The experts in the capital were shocked and furious. Even the experts in the restaurant jerked their heads and looked at the huge array that blotted out the sky outside the capital. With the array, the invaders could not attack them. Impossible! How could those soul demons get so close to the capital so quickly? Have the battlefronts of the other great worlds been defeated? The divine emperor frowned. He rose to his feet. Light burst out of his body in an instant. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a dragon and sped out of the restaurant. Everyone was horrified. The divine emperor. It was actually the divine emperor. He was the lord of the divine dynasty, a supreme existence. A group of people fell to their knees and bowed in the direction of the divine emperor's departure. Bam! 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 The divine dynasty's array was constantly being attacked. Ripples of energy spread across the sky. Rumble. A loud rumble rang out. Inside the capital, battle cries rang out. Generals after generals stretched across the sky. King Pingyang, clad in armor and riding a chariot, looked serious. He was exuding an aura of iron and blood. As a king of the Xiai divine dynasty, it was his duty to protect the dynasty. The thought of fighting on the battlefield again made his blood boil. Roar! Battle cries resounded in the sky. Outside the light screen, an expert covered in black barbaric glyphs and with scarlet eyes walked out of the void. The next moment, his body exploded. A white bone warship appeared in Xiao Chen's physical body, densely covering the sky. The ferocious bone spikes looked horrifying. In front of the bone warship, there were 3 black meatballs which were bulging. Suddenly, they exploded with a bang. Then, they turned into behemoths, blotting out the sky and blotting out the sun. Rumble. An oppressive dark aura filled the air as if black lightning was tearing everything apart. 1, 2, 3. 3 behemoths opened their mouths and let out bestial roars that shook the whole Xiai divine dynasty's capital. The behemoths were extremely terrifying. Their backs were covered with thick scales, and their tails, claws, and foreheads were covered with spikes. Sitting cross-legged on their backs were Titan experts with barbaric glyphs all over their bodies. Their eyes were scarlet. On the warship, 2 experts from the divine temple stood against the wind. Their scarlet eyes were fixed on the prosperous capital under the array. A cold smile came to the corners of their mouths. Using a special method, they had brought the ancient soul demon beast to the Xiai divine dynasty's capital in secret. Naturally, they were not here for an outing. They had to destroy the Xiai divine dynasty's capital in one fell swoop, or at least severely injure it. This would be a huge blow to the human army. Kill! The temple guardian roared. The huge savage beast roared. Its roar shattered the void, and then its huge barbed tail smashed down toward the Xiai divine dynasty's protective array. Chapter 1559. Ancient soul beasts were a kind of fearsome, savage beasts bred by the soul demons. Each of them was as large as a star, extremely ferocious, and was born for war. Their strength was no weaker than that of a human high-grade god king. They were war machines with great destructive power, and for a civilization, they were a destructive nightmare. Their tails, in particular, had barbs, which contained strange energy and specialized in destroying arrays. In war, they were an invincible defense-breaking weapon. Rumble. The 3 ancient beasts blotted out the sky and roared in the starry sky. Then, their barbed tails smashed down like huge hammers and smashed hard on the array. A rumbling sound rang out. The huge array that enveloped the Xiai divine dynasty's capital began to tremble violently at this moment. This array had cost hundreds of millions of source stones. Every time it was used to defend, it was burning money. However, even though it had cost hundreds of millions of source stones, it still seemed to be as fragile as a piece of paper. At the place where the hammer had struck, the barbed tail had sunk deep into the formation. Then, with a swipe of its tail, it tore a huge hole in the array. The hole could not be healed. Gradually, the 3 holes grew larger and larger. Finally, the entire array exploded with a bang. Everyone in the capital raised their heads and looked at the broken array. They felt a burst of dazzling light. Their eyes were filled with confusion. The broken array was emitting a colorful luster, which was quite dazzling. Meanwhile, in the capital, at the moment when the formation was broken, Yi Shiwen's eyes widened. The eyes of the soldiers and guards hovering in midair narrowed. Rumble. In the imperial palace, the shy divine emperor, clad in a military uniform, stepped out of the palace with a square jade seal in his hand. It was the divine emperor's seal, the divine artifact of the Xiai divine dynasty. Its power was terrifying, even more so than the phoenix plume. As soon as the divine emperor appeared, it was as if the backbone of the dynasty had appeared. All the soldiers perked up. Black armor and gold armor turned into two beams of light and stood guard at the divine emperor's side like two guardian divine generals. One of them held a knife, while the other held a sword. Knife energy and sword energy surged, each occupying half of the sky. The rainbow-colored light quickly dissipated. Then what appeared was the army of soul demons. The bone worship and 3 colossal ancient beasts formed an army of soul demons that could shake anyone's heart. The roar was deafening, and a monstrous demonic aura instantly covered the sky. How dare a mere team destroy the capital of the Xiai divine dynasty? The Xiai divine emperor was clad in a military uniform, and his eyes were cold. Although he was old, his might was still there. In particular, after experiencing the Empyrean tribulation, he was recuperating. His current strength had already stabilized. He was not afraid of these soul demons. Boom! He flipped his hand. The divine emperor's seal instantly shot out. Under the control of the Xiai divine emperor's mental force, the divine emperor's seal soared up and spun in the sky, sprinkling down beams of heavy light. He wanted to crush a soul demon ancient beast in an instant. However, since these soul demons dared to break into the Xiai divine dynasty's capital so boldly, they naturally had something to rely on. It was impossible for them not to know the Xiai divine emperor's strength. Since he dared to show up despite knowing the Xiai divine emperor's strength, he must have a trump card. Buzz in the face of the divine emperor's seal. Inside the bone ship, a whistling sound rang out. A hidden existence rushed up in an instant and let out a roar. It was also a savage beast, but compared to the soul demon ancient beast, which was as strong as a star, it was much smaller. It was about the size of an ordinary human. It shot out from the white bone ship at an extremely fast speed. It tore through the sky and instantly headed towards the divine emperor's seal that suppressed the heavens. It collided with the divine emperor's seal. A terrible rumbling sound rang out. The divine emperor's seal seemed to be on the verge of exploding, emitting a violent rumble of energy. In the sky, the divine emperor clasped his hands behind his back and frowned. What's this? A thought flashed through his mind. The divine emperor's seal flew back to him. Hovering in his hand, a corroded crack appeared on the surface of the divine emperor's seal, the divine artifact of the Xiai divine dynasty. The divine emperor's pupils constricted. The means of these soul demons were too strange. Humans are our food, and we have our own ways to deal with them. On the back of a giant beast, an expert covered in barbaric glyphs laughed out loud. His scarlet eyes became even more sinister as he let out a shrill cry. Immediately, one soul demon after another rushed out of the warship. Boom! The void distorted. A guardian covered in insect scales exuded a terrifying aura that seemed capable of destroying heaven and earth. He dashed forward. Then, he rushed toward the Xiai divine emperor. The divine emperor was furious. With a flick of his wrist, the divine emperor's seal flew out. However, the moment the divine emperor's seal appeared, the black ferocious beast charged forth once again and collided with the divine emperor's seal. It corroded the divine emperor's seal, causing the divine artifact to be unable to display its power. What kind of creature is this? The Xiai divine emperor took a deep breath. The temple guard closed in. His entire body was covered in insect scales, and the insect scales were covered with barbaric glyphs. Compared to when he was dealing with Bufong, the keeper of the temple was much stronger now. The Xiai divine emperor's eyes were bright. The power of the laws descended, causing his aura to rise steadily. Emperor realm experts had their own strengths. He pushed out his palm, and collided with the temple guard. Bang! A collision ensued. The Divine Emperor's battle robe fluttered, and his momentum surged. He threw out a set of Divine Emperor fists and crushed the temple guard. As a top existence among the God Emperors, his strength was not something that anyone could underestimate. Even though he was past the end of his life, now that he was free of the calamity, the power he could exert was very amazing. It was still somewhat difficult for a temple guard to deal with the Divine Emperor. Although he could fight back, he was always at a disadvantage. However, the purpose of the soul demons who came this time was to seriously injure the Divine Emperor. If they could seriously injure him, they would have a great advantage in this war. Rumble. Inside the bone warship, another guardian of the temple appeared out of nowhere. The insect-scaled knife in his hand slashed down, and a terrible dark knife energy almost tore the sky apart. The Divine Emperor's eyes shone like torches as he threw out a punch fearlessly. Bam! 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 A violent explosion rang out, filling the air with rumbling sounds. The Divine Emperor and the two temple guards were locked in a fierce battle. Gold armor and black armor roared and charged forward, brandishing their knives and swords. Kill them! Their voices rang out. The guards of the Shiai Divine Dynasty, who stayed in the capital, immediately soared into the sky. One by one, they fearlessly charged toward the bone warship and the huge ancient beasts. The ancient beasts were simply too huge, and in a war, they were simply sharp weapons. With a sweep of their tails, they could kill a large number of experts. Many experts could not resist them at all. As soon as they touched them, they exploded into a mist of blood. Then they opened their mouths and sucked human experts into their mouths like whales, turning them into food. Sitting on the backs of the giant beasts, the soul demons who controlled the savage beasts laughed excitedly. The smell of blood permeated their bodies and seemed to stimulate their blood, making them more and more excited. It should be noted that the soul demons had bred no more than 6 ancient beasts in the chaotic universe, and they had sent 3 of them to the Shiai Divine Dynasty's capital. It could be said that they attached great importance to the battle here. The Shiai Divine Dynasty's capital would definitely suffer a heavy blow. Gold Armor's eyes were cold. As a top high-grade God King of the Divine Dynasty, his strength was as fearsome as ever. Black Armor was slightly weaker, so he could only stay in the rear and guide the army. The war broke out without reservation. Although the ancient beasts were huge, it was precisely because of their size that the human experts could take advantage of the situation. The human expert leaped onto the beast's tail and sped all the way to the top of the beast. Their target was the soul demon who controlled the ancient beasts. The soul demon knew that as well, but he still sneered disdainfully. The ancient beasts swayed, and their scales suddenly flashed with a dark luster. In the void, the sword-wielding Golden Armor's pupils constricted. His golden armor seemed to dim under this luster. Rumble! All of a sudden, the scales on the enormous soul demon ancient beast's bodies trembled. Then, the experts who were running wildly on the ancient beasts felt their hair stand on end. Slash! Slash! Sharp bone spikes grew out from under their feet and pierced them from their feet to their heads. A pitch-black aura filled the air. The humans who were pierced were instantly absorbed and turned into skeletons. Meanwhile, the ancient beasts began to grow stronger because of the nutrients they absorbed. Gold Armor's eyes turned red. How many human experts on the ancient beast's backs died in an instant? Only mid-grade, God King level existences could barely withstand it. However, even if they could not stop the soul demon's attack. These ancient beasts were really difficult to deal with. No wonder they were the soul demon's weapons of war. In the sky, on another battlefield, the Shiai Divine Emperor was fighting the 2 keepers. One keeper might not be a match for the Divine Emperor, but when 2 of them appeared at the same time, they were basically on par with the Shiai Divine Emperor. Soul 13 isn't here? I can't believe he's not here despite the great battle array. Could he be hiding in the dark, preparing to give me a fatal blow? The Shiai Divine Emperor threw out a punch, as if to shatter the stars. His fist flashed and burst into bursts of divine light. The power of the law enveloped him, spinning and crushing everything. The temple guard was forced to retreat, but he still persisted in his pursuit. Rumbling filled the sky, accompanied by the roars of beasts and the sound of explosions. In the capital of the Xiai divine dynasty, the capital, which was usually bustling with activity, had long been desolate. Everyone was hiding in their houses, looking up at the battle in the sky, their bodies trembling. The divine emperor's blood that spilled from time to time seemed to be composing a lament. In the Luo family's skyscraper, in a restaurant, Bufang wiped his palms and lifted the kitchen curtain. There were no longer any customers in the restaurant. Everyone seemed to have gone to pay attention to the battle. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang walked out slowly. He came to the door, stood there, and looked up at the sky outside. The Luo family skyscraper was very tall. With Bufang's eyesight, he could even see the human experts being blown up and the splatter in blood. At some point, you had floated behind Bufang. The shy crown prince clenched his fists, his eyes red. If it weren't for his identity as a waiter, he would have rushed into the sky and fought side by side with the divine emperor. Bufang glanced sideways at the shy crown prince, who was extremely excited. He took a deep breath. Do you want to go? The enemy is already at my doorstep. As the crown prince, how can I not fight? The crown prince clenched his fists, his blood boiling. Bufang nodded. He turned his head again. He was also very unhappy with the soul demons. He was almost killed in the Titan divine dynasty. Then go, Bufang said. The crown prince's eyes burst into bright light. He gave Bufang a deep look, then bowed to Bufang. He felt that Bufang was already worthy of his respect. The next moment, he opened his mouth and let out a roar. With a flip of his hand, a dragon knife fell into it. He stepped on the skyscraper and was about to soar into the sky. However, just as he was about to rush into the sky, a fair palm suddenly pressed down on his shoulder. She pressed down on his body that was about to leap up. The crown prince was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He turned his head and found that it was Bufang who had pressed him down. Are you going to go like this? It's not that I want to say this, but with your strength, you can't kill a few soul demons. Bufang said seriously. Oh, the shy crown prince looked confused. Then, in front of his confused eyes, with a shake of his hand, Bufang produced a bowl of stinky tofu with sauce. A strong stench instantly rushed into the crown prince's nostrils. His face instantly turned the color of feces. His eyes were full of resentment. Is Bufang going to ask me to kill soul demons with stinky tofu? Are you crazy? Chapter 1560. A bowl of stinky tofu. A pungent stench wafted through the air and rushed into his nostrils, making him feel as if his stomach was churning. It was a very disgusting feeling. Yes, disgusting. Is Bufang going to let me use this bowl of stinky tofu to disgust those soul demons to death? How was that possible? The ferocity of those soul demons is not something a bowl of stinky tofu can compare with. The crown prince wanted to refuse, but Bufang shoved the bowl of stinky tofu into his hand. Letting out a sigh, the crown prince felt that everything had become so dark and gloomy. Go. I believe in you. Bufang shoved the stinky tofu into the crown prince's hand, then raised his hand, patted him on the shoulder, and encouraged him with a straight face. The crown prince rolled his eyes. Then he soared into the sky. He held the dragon knife in one hand and the stinky tofu in the other. He soared into the sky, stepping on the void like a dragon emerging from the abyss. His aura was so strong that it was eye-catching. The shy crown prince had comprehended two supreme laws of the universe and had successfully become a god. His current cultivation base and fighting prowess were very formidable. The moment he joined the battlefield, he charged forward like a raging savage beast. His knife swept out, and his fighting spirit towered into the sky. In the Luo family's skyscraper, Bufang stood at the top of the skyscraper with his hands clasped behind his back. The wind was blowing. The sleeves of his vermilion robe were flapping noisily. as Bufong watched the crown prince soar into the sky like a dragon. The look in his eyes became extremely strange. You gave Bufong a puzzled look. She seemed to feel that there was something wrong with Bufong's expression. Hades' era and the Titan Crown Prince came out one after another. Hades' era glanced at them, yawned, and went back into the restaurant. As for the Titan Crown Prince, he clenched his fists, and his eyes were red. Soul demons. Those soul demons had occupied the fleshly bodies of the Titan Divine Dynasty's experts. This is the hatred of the destruction of a nation, and it cannot be washed away. The shy crown prince soared into the sky, expressing his thoughts more and more frankly. It was as if there was a surge of chi spreading from the soles of his feet to his entire body. His aura was incomparably powerful and terrifying. Holding the dragon saber swept out. Saber chi crisscrossed, and the law of destruction and the law of space superimposed at the same time, bursting out with superpower. With a sweep of the knife, several ordinary soul demons were killed. The more the crown prince killed, the happier he became. He felt that his mental state was about to sublimate. He was the crown prince, and he had to protect his homeland. He wanted to fight alongside the divine emperor. The crown prince held the smelly tofu in one hand and the dragon saber in the other. Towards the end, he even forgot that he was holding the stinky tofu. However, he hit and hit. He found a little strange. He found that there were more and more soul demons around him. That's right. There were more and more of them. This feeling was a little strange. The pressure on the crown prince became very great because the number of soul demons had increased. Even with his strength, he felt a little heavy. Waving the dragon saber seemed to have become a lot more difficult. Boom! With just one move, he pushed back several soul demons. Those soul demons had scarlet eyes and saliva dripping from their mouths. They looked very disgusting, and the insect scales on their bodies glowed brilliantly. The crown prince felt a little strange. What the hell is going on? The more the crown prince fought, the stranger he felt. Buzz, the power of the law exploded out of him, and his body streaked across the sky like a shooting star. Behind him, roars rang out as one soul demon after another chased after him frantically. Moreover, as he moved, more and more soul demons joined the chase. What the F***CK? The crown prince's face turned black, and he almost cursed. Although he wanted to fight, he did not want to die. Are all soul demons so shameless? Are they all ganging up on me? However, the many experts around him also had strange looks on their faces. They looked at the crown prince, who was being chased, in confusion. The soul demons who were fighting with them suddenly left the battle and joined the team chasing after the crown prince. Is the crown prince's charm so high? The crown prince's scalp went numb. He inadvertently turned his head and glanced behind him. When he saw the swarm of soul demons behind him, all his hair stood on end. Why are there more and more of them? The crown prince's heart skipped a beat, and he was almost scared to death. Anyone would be frightened by this scene. Suddenly, a rumbling sound rang out. The crown prince felt that the aura around him was enveloped by a strange energy. A terrible soul demon aura pressed down on him, causing his flying speed to slow down significantly. Damn it, it's a numbered soul demon. The crown prince's pupils constricted. If he were to fight a numbered soul demon now, he would definitely die. The gap between him and the numbered soul demon was too great. The eyes of the numbered soul demon, who was approaching the crown prince, turned scarlet. He roared at the crown prince, but before he could make a move, he was swept away by a sword light. Scram! Gold armor descended and thrust out his sword. The sword turned into 10,000 swords, which shone brilliantly and forced the numbered soul demon back. At the same time, many of the soul demons behind the crown prince were seriously injured. Gold armor's face grew much graver. Have these soul demons sensed the uniqueness of the crown prince's identity? Or have they seen through the crown prince's monstrous talent? I heard that soul demons like talented humans the most because they taste good. Has the crown prince become their target? Gold armor frowned. He naturally could not let the Crown Prince become food for these soul demons. He was the Crown Prince of noble status. How could he be eaten by soul demons? Rumble. A wave of sword light rolled up. It turned into a dragon of sword energy and shot toward the numbered soul demons in the distance. Gold Armor wanted to use his cultivation base to forcibly attract those soul demons and make them change their target. Rumble. The numbered soul demons and Gold Armor fought again. However, the other soul demons, on the other hand, turned around and chased after the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince, who had breathed a sigh of relief, suddenly felt his hair stand on end. These fellows can actually see through my monstrous talent and recognize my noble status. I must hang in there. I must not fall into the hands of these soul demons. The Crown Prince roared. He suddenly felt the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. Holding the stinky tofu in one hand and the dragon knife in the other, he moved quickly. He glanced at the stinky tofu in his hand with disgust in his eyes. If this stinky tofu had not been given to him by Bufong, he would have thrown it away on the spot. Boom! Boom! More than a dozen soul demons approached. They opened their mouths wide and drooled crazily. Every soul demon's eyes were red, bursting with infinite greed and desire. Their noses were twitching, and they looked intoxicated. The Crown Prince retreated. With a slash of his knife, he turned into a roaring divine dragon and went straight toward those soul demons. However, he did not push them back. The Crown Prince gritted his teeth, stepped on the void, and began to flee frantically. He would not fall into the hands of these soul demons, no matter what. He was the man who would inherit the throne in the future. In the distance, the divine emperor and the two keepers were locked in a fierce battle. The area tens of thousands of miles around their battlefield had become empty, and even the debris of the stars had been shattered into ashes. The sound of banging rang out incessantly. The Crown Prince felt that the divine power in him was about to run dry. It was a terrible feeling. He could not fly anymore. Some of the soul demons behind him were stronger than him, and some were weaker. However, there were too many of them. He could not hide. Am I going to die? Am I going to die before I can achieve anything? Am I going to be beaten to death by a group of soul demons? Why don't you fight me fair and square? The Crown Prince was furious. He put away the dragon knife. Holding the bowl of stinky tofu, he turned and glared at those soul demons. He roared. He wanted to force these soul demons back with his fearless aura. However, these soul demons did not seem to feel anything, and they were not forced by his aura at all. These soul demons, are they not afraid of death anymore? In order to kill me, you soul demons are really going all out. With my status, it's a loss to trade for one or two. At the very least, I have to kill all these soul demons. That way, everyone in the Xiai divine dynasty will remember their gifted Crown Prince. The Crown Prince turned around. He let out a long roar. Then, he threw out the bowl of stinky tofu that he had been holding. I'm going to die, so why am I still holding the stinky tofu? Bufong's deterrence is useless against me. The Crown Prince's fist. The Crown Prince's eyes turned red in an instant. His aura skyrocketed, and he shot into the starry sky like a beam of light. It was magnificent and magnificent. He was resolute and determined to die. He wanted to fight to the death with these soul demons who had driven him to a dead end. He wanted to let these soul demons know that the Crown Prince was not someone they could chase casually. There was a price to pay for chasing the Crown Prince. Come on. The Crown Prince roared across the starry sky. He waved his fists. The eyes of the surrounding human experts were wet with tears, and some of them were frantically rushing toward the Crown Prince's position. The Crown Prince must not die. The Crown Prince is our faith. If the Crown Prince dies, the soul demons will have achieved their goal in this battle, and the morale of the Xiai divine dynasty will be greatly affected. You must not. The human experts had tears in their eyes. They felt heartache for their resolute disciple. Once the Crown Prince, he will always be our Crown Prince. Boom! The Crown Prince roared and threw out his fist. However, the atmosphere became a little awkward for a moment. The bowl of stinky tofu he threw away fell apart. A strange stench wafted through the air and seemed to envelop the surrounding area. However, the stench at this moment could not compare to the determination in the Crown Prince's heart. He did not care about the stinky tofu at all. However, the soul demons who were chasing the Crown Prince, at this moment, they all changed their course and chased after the stinky tofu. The stinky tofu that fell apart, the stinky tofu that was fried black gold, and the stinky tofu that was covered in a strange sauce. It had become the greedy target of those soul demons. Bam! The Crown Prince's fist missed its target. The soul demons all took a detour. The Crown Prince froze in midair. Those ferocious soul demons who wanted to kill him were chasing after the stinky tofu at this moment. At this moment, the Crown Prince seemed to understand something. He remembered Bu Fang's encouraging words when he patted him on the shoulder. The Crown Prince felt a strong urge to vomit blood in his chest. I'm the Crown Prince of a Xiai divine dynasty. Am I not as good as a bowl of stinky tofu? The Crown Prince's eyes turned red. The human experts, who thought the Crown Prince was dead, froze as well. So, Crown Prince, are you here to be funny? The human experts breathed a sigh of relief and changed their target again, heading toward the soul demons. As for the Crown Prince, he could do whatever he wanted. Their current mood was to kill the enemy. The Crown Prince felt a little heartache. Looking at the soul demons who were chasing after the stinky tofu behind him, he breathed a sigh of relief. The Crown Prince, was actually defeated by a bowl of stinky tofu that he despised so much. The Crown Prince, was no match for a bowl of stinky tofu that smelled like shit. These soul demons are looking down on me. The Crown Prince's eyes shone like torches. His anger surged, and his embarrassment turned into fighting spirit. His roar shattered the stars, and his figure shot forward. He charged toward the soul demons who were chasing after the stinky tofu. There were 10 stinky tofu in total. The sauce flew everywhere, and the strange stench filled the air. To humans, it was a foul smell, but to the soul demons, it was a rich fragrance. It was so fragrant that it made their legs weak, and they could not walk. A soul demon grabbed the stinky tofu, his face beaming with wild joy. Then he grabbed the stinky tofu and stuffed it into his mouth. Slurp! The stinky tofu was crushed. The Crown Prince's hair stood on end as he watched. Bu Fang's food is indeed poisonous. It eats both humans and soul demons. Isn't it said that soul demons have a natural aversion to human food? Suddenly, the Crown Prince froze. He looked into the distance. The soul demons who had eaten the stinky tofu suddenly began to tremble violently. At the same time, a flame seemed to emerge from the soul demons' bodies. Then, the flame spread. In an instant, the soul demons who had eaten the stinky tofu were burned to ashes. Only the Crown Prince saw this scene. The Crown Prince was shocked and dumbfounded. The soul demons who saw this could not resist the temptation of the stinky tofu at all. They knew that they would die if they ate it, but they still could not suppress their appetite and shoved it into their mouths. Rumble, 10 stinky tofu, 10 soul demons who had eaten the stinky tofu. All of them were burned to ashes. The power of the stinky tofu was so terrifying. Chapter 1561. What's going on? The Crown Prince sucked in a cold breath and stared at the soul demons in the distance, who were being burned to death. The menacing soul demons who were chasing him were burned into nothingness in an instant. Is it so strong? Is there something wrong with the stinky tofu? He remembered the serious expression on Bu Fang's face when he stuffed the stinky tofu into his hand. The Crown Prince seemed to have discovered something extraordinary. This stinky tofu is the nemesis of soul demons. The Crown Prince was excited. In the distance, the soul demons were eating stinky tofu, but their bodies were slowly burning. A numbered soul demon snatched a piece of stinky tofu. After swallowing it, his body began to burn in flames. However, he was not completely burned to death like the other soul demons. His flesh was covered in flames. However, the numbered soul demon was very strong. He was able to resist the flames and did not turn into ashes like the other soul demons. This showed that although the effect of Bufang's stinky tofu was obvious, its suppression on the numbered soul demon was not as strong. He looked at the numbered soul demon, who was struggling and roaring. There was a price to pay for tasting delicious food. The Crown Prince roared, "I'll kill him while he's weak. If I don't make a move now, the Crown Prince, will be too stupid." Rumble. The Crown Prince moved. The dragon knife flashed brilliantly, leaving a long beam of light in the air as it shot into the distance. It moved extremely fast, heading straight for the numbered soul demon. The numbered soul demon's eyes turned blood red. Although he was on the verge of death from the fire, he was still able to control himself. Although he was burning and dying, he was still fierce. "Damn human! Get lost!" The numbered soul demon roared. The Crown Prince's heart tightened. He was still under great pressure, facing a numbered soul demon. If it were a perfect numbered soul demon, he would have to take a detour. However, this numbered soul demon was not perfect and was about to be burned to death. This was his chance. The knife slashed down with towering momentum. The Crown Prince charged toward the numbered soul demon. Even though the latter was seriously injured, he still felt a wave of pressure. A fierce battle broke out in an instant. Flames soared into the sky. The knife light swept across the whole battlefield. After a long time, the Crown Prince slashed the knife. A dragon roar soared into the sky, and a huge head rose into the sky, surrounded by black smoke. A black soul demon's true form was about to flee. However, the flames spread and burned the soul demon's true form into nothingness. The Crown Prince panted violently. His eyes widened. He watched the numbered soul demon die. He felt an indescribable excitement in his heart. Then, he clenched his fists and swung them at the sky. How exciting! He did not kill a numbered soul demon alone. However, the satisfaction in his heart made him extremely intoxicated. The death of a numbered soul demon was a great loss to the soul demon army. After all, the soul demons had only sent one bone ship this time in order to attack the enemy's base. Although there were many numbered soul demons, one dead meant one less. Suddenly, a terrifying explosion occurred. The terrifying explosion caused everything to tremble unceasingly. The Crown Prince's heart skipped a beat, and he turned his head to look into the distance. That was the battlefield between the divine emperor and the guardian of the temple. The resplendent splendor was like the explosion of a star, dazzling and eye-catching. The energy clamored and spread out unceasingly. The Crown Prince's eyes were slightly dull. Then, his pupils constricted. There, a figure flew backward and spat out a mouthful of blood. His blood glowed brilliantly under the starry sky. But it looked so miserable. The shy divine emperor is truly fearsome. A monstrous plume of black smoke soared into the sky and turned into the shadow of a huge, savage beast. It was the true form of a soul demon. The divine emperor's battle robe was torn, and there were some wounds on his body. His wrinkled face was trembling. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and breathed a long sigh of relief. The divine emperor's hands, which rested at his waist, kept shaking. He had been guarding against Soul 13, whom Bufang had mentioned. However, he never thought that Soul 13 would not show up, and instead, a soul demon, a keeper, would blow him up. The soul demon had protected his fleshly body and wounded him with the explosion. These soul demons were really ruthless. However, even if they lost their fleshly bodies, they still had fighting strength, which was the most terrifying thing about them. The remaining guardian sprang out and charged at the God Emperor. He was extremely fast, and the terrible impact he brought with him made the faces of the surrounding people flicker. Was the divine emperor going to be defeated? However, when the keeper approached the divine emperor with his fleshly body intact, a look of horror came over his face. "You're crazy." He let out a roar that did not stop. However, he was met with the divine emperor's cold and serious eyes. He raised the divine emperor's seal, which shone even brighter. As soon as the seal appeared, the savage beast that could destroy divine artifacts shot over, trying to repel it. However, the Divine Emperor didn't simply use the Divine Emperor seal this time. Rumble. With a thought, the Divine Emperor seal suddenly exploded. The energy inside was boiling like a volcano. In an instant, the surging energy devoured everything. Boom. The explosion of the divine artifact of the dynasty. The temple guard was swallowed whole. Even the true form of the soul demon could not escape and was annihilated. Cough, cough, cough. The explosion seemed to destroy half of the galaxy. It was dazzling and blinding. The entire capital of the divine dynasty began to tremble under the shock waves of the explosion. Cough, cough, cough. The divine emperor coughed up blood. His face was slightly pale. His expression was not optimistic. These soul demons were too terrifying. Soul 13, whom Bufong had mentioned, had not appeared yet. Just two top-numbered soul demons had seriously injured him and forced him to explode his divine artifact. Why didn't Soul 13 show up? The immortal spirit divine emperor said that there was no trace of him on the battlefield, so she guessed that he might have come here. But why isn't he here, since Soul 13 is not here? Then, the divine emperor covered his mouth with his hand, and his pupils constricted. Oh no! Boom! The explosion made the sky extremely dazzling. Bufong stood on the roof of the Luo family's skyscraper, looking at the battle in the starry sky. No one knew what he was thinking. Luo Sanyang had come to Bufong's side at some point. She looked anxious and afraid. The people of the Luo family had also joined the battle. The explosion made her more and more uneasy and frightened. It's okay. These soul demons can't be demons, Bufong said faintly. Looking at Bufong's back, Luo Sanyang seemed to be infected by his confidence. Rumble. Suddenly, the whole capital of the Xiai divine dynasty was shaken, and people cried out in alarm. Everyone raised their heads and looked over in disbelief. Over there, a shadow that swept across heaven and earth slowly descended from the sky, emanating an extremely terrifying aura. It was the true form of a soul demon. It was twisted, ferocious, and as disgusting as ever. Wherever it passed, the temperature dropped sharply as if it was snowing and hailstones were falling. The soul demon's true form was very strong. It was the true form of the soul demon who had seriously injured the divine emperor by exploding himself first. And now, its target was Bufong. Damn chef. Die. Soul 13 had said that the chef had used a lot of energy and would be weakened for a long time. Once he survived that period of time, it would not be a good thing for the soul demons. Therefore, the keeper was determined to kill Bufong at all costs. While the chef was seriously injured, that was why they had gone straight to the Xiai Divine Dynasty's capital at all costs. The first was to seriously injure the Xiai Divine Emperor, and the second was to kill the chef. He had achieved the first goal. Although the price was much higher than he had expected, it was still within an acceptable range. As for the second goal, he was about to achieve it now. The people of the Xiai Divine Dynasty did not expect that this soul demon would turn and attack them. This was a numbered soul demon, a top-numbered soul demon, not much weaker than Soul 13. He was very strong. He could even be called an emperor-level existence. After all, he could fight against the divine emperor. A soul demon of this level was a nightmare for ordinary people. Even if he was left with only his true form, even a high-grade god king would die if he encountered him. The weather seemed to have changed. The temple guard continued to charge forward. His figure kept changing in midair. Sometimes he took the form of a savage beast, and sometimes he took the form of a human. He smashed down from the sky. He was heading toward the Luo family skyscraper, and his goal was to kill Bufong. She felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Her whole body seemed to be frozen, and even her blood flow became very slow. Boom, boom. Around the Luo family's skyscraper, one figure after another shot up into the sky. They wanted to stop this soul demon, who the divine emperor had placed in the vicinity to protect Bufong. They were determined to carry out the divine Emperor's order. Rumble. However, in just an instant, those experts were sent flying away as if they were dry weeds and rotten wood. Their faces were pale, and they coughed up blood as they flew backward. The true form of this numbered soul demon was like a great demon, invisible and immaterial. Ordinary high-grade god kings were no match for him at all. The keeper's scarlet eyes flashed. He saw Bufong. Naturally, he recognized Bufong, the chef who came to the Titan Divine Dynasty and ran away unscathed. How could he forget him? This chef was also his target this time. We meet again. Damned stinky chef. If it weren't for you, the soul demons would have been able to develop longer, and this chaotic universe would have become the world of soul demons. The keeper growled. Then he transformed into his human form and shot toward Bufong. The whole capital seemed to be enveloped in a layer of darkness. The surrounding houses kept exploding and completely collapsed under the soul demon's power. Only the Luo family's skyscraper remained standing. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufong stood on the top floor of the Luo family skyscraper. He looked indifferently at the soul demons who kept falling. He was very familiar. It was the keeper. The latter's killing intent made Bufong slightly narrow his eyes. Bufong was a little stunned by what these soul demons were doing. He never thought that these soul demons would go to so much trouble to kill him. It seemed that they had realized how terrible stinky tofu was to them. Unfortunately, the keeper had guessed too much wrong. If Soul 13 had come, Bufong would have been a little afraid. He was just a keeper who had lost his fleshly body and was only left with his true form. In that case, what did Bufong have to fear now that he had all the god of cooking sets? In fact, Bufong, did not even need to use the supreme laws of the universe. As for this soul demon, the corner of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly. Although the people around him were trembling under the pressure of the soul demon, but he was really sneering. Yu's ghostly green hair spread out, and her pupils turned ghostly green. She was about to strike. However, just as she was about to do so, she was stopped by Bufong. "Let me do it," Bufong said faintly. After saying that, under Nethery's astonished gaze, he removed the black ladle from his waist. One ladle is enough for this kind of trash. Chapter 1562. In the immortal spirit divine dynasty, in the center of the vast galaxy of stars, there was a huge planet. It was enshrouded in dense, immortal energy. This was the mother planet of the immortal spirit divine dynasty, and it was also the location of its capital. Now, the planet, which was shrouded in immortal energy, was filled with a pitch-black aura, which was full of evil and sin and could corrode everything. In the starry sky, numerous bone warships could be seen flying out of them, and one expert after another who looked like the Titan Divine Dynasty shot toward the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty's camp. These experts of the Titan Divine Dynasty were no longer the experts of the past. They were soul demons now. They were called evil creatures who represented evil. Terrifying ancient beasts of the soul demons hovered in the starry sky. Although they were huge and bloated, they were extremely terrible weapons of war. Every time they attacked, and every sweep of their barbed tails, the warships of the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty's camp would crumble. Countless gods fell in the starry sky. Divine blood floated in the starry sky, while the remains of gods, their skeletons, their wailing souls, and so on. War was always cruel, and it brought indelible wounds to people. The cries of phoenixes were loud and sweet. Flames soared into the sky. Then, fire phoenixes flew out of the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty's camp, spreading their wings and waving their tails. The soul demons had ancient beasts, and the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty also had phoenixes. Although the phoenixes were not as huge as the ancient beasts, they were numerous and well-trained. Whether it was the dark phoenixes, the flame phoenixes, or the life phoenixes, all kinds of phoenixes flew across the starry sky and wheeled around the ancient beasts. The phoenix feathers on their bodies seemed to have turned into the sharpest arrows as they shot toward the ancient beast down below. The Xiai divine dynasty had divine dragons, while the immortal spirit divine dynasty had phoenixes. Their distribution was quite even, which gave them a great advantage against the ancient beasts. The ancient beasts were as huge as stars, and the phoenix feathers smashed into them. Although the phoenix feathers caused a series of explosions when they hit them, they did not harm them in the slightest. Then, the ancient beast's barbed tails swept out and hit a phoenix, causing it to wail. Phoenix blood swept through the starry sky. Blood splashed everywhere, creating an incomparably miserable scene. However, the body of the phoenix, which had been smashed to pieces, suddenly burst into flames. A raging fire was burning. Phoenixes were known as the immortal birds. They were reborn from the ashes and fought the ancient beasts again. The battle of the immortal spirit divine dynasty was difficult and cruel. One god king after another rushed out of the immortal spirit divine dynasty to fight the soul demons. Sword light, saber light, spear light, staff shadow. The fluctuations from all kinds of weapons were about to set off earth-shattering waves. Boom! A black-haired woman in a golden battle robe swept across the sky. Every strike and every momentum caused the void to change. Strong. He was really too strong. This woman's strength was earth-shattering. She was the empress of the immortal spirit divine dynasty. Compared to the Xiai divine emperor, her only advantage was that she was young. It was the phoenix bow, the divine artifact of the immortal spirit divine dynasty. It was made of the phoenix bones of 999 ancient phoenixes, and its arrows were made of the heart feathers of phoenixes. Possessing supreme power, it was a sharp weapon used to kill soul demons. Each arrow killed a soul demon, making it difficult for the soul demons to reveal their true forms. The empress of the immortal spirit divine dynasty was the backbone of the dynasty. Although all the great worlds of the immortal spirit divine dynasty had turned into fierce battlefields, the center of the dynasty was the most tragic. This was because the main point of the soul demon's attack was here. The four great protectors of the immortal spirit divine dynasty were four top-grade god kings, and their slaughter terrified the soul demons. The empress's face was extremely cold. Facing the soul demons, she showed no mercy. She knew very well that those who were not of the same race would not be of the same mind. After all, this was a battle of life and death. In fact, if the Xiai divine dynasty had not informed the immortal spirit divine dynasty and asked them to make preparations in advance, they might have been caught off guard by the Titan divine dynasty, who had turned into soul demons. No one knew how these soul demons were born and how they multiplied into such a terrifying force. But, no matter what, the soul demons fed on humans and were their natural enemies. A war had to break out. Kill. Although she was the empress, her iron-blooded aura was no weaker than that of the Xiai divine emperor. Under her leadership, the momentum of the immortal spirit divine dynasty's army soared. Led by the four great protectors, they charged into the midst of the soul demons like a sharp sword and fought fiercely with them. Surprisingly, they seemed to be suppressing the soul demons. In the immortal spirit divine dynasty, in the imperial palace of the immortal spirit divine dynasty was even more luxurious. Built on a divine mountain, it was surrounded by dense mist and surrounded by immortal flowers and divine trees, making it look like a paradise. In the great hall of the imperial palace, a woman in armor sat cross-legged. She was the fifth protector of the immortal spirit divine dynasty, a top-grade god king. Although she wanted to go out and kill the enemies, she had a more important task. However, she had a more important task: to protect the crown princess of the immortal spirit divine dynasty. Yes, this was an order given to her by the empress to protect the crown princess at all costs. The crown princess's talent was world-shaking. Ever since the empress brought the crown princess back, the talent the crown princess showed had conquered all of them. The crown prince of the Xiai divine dynasty? He has comprehended two supreme laws of the universe. Ha! In front of the crown princess, he is just a weakling. I'm in the imperial palace. I won't be in danger. Go and help the empress. Inside the palace, the curtains were drawn and a graceful figure spoke from behind the curtains. Her voice was gentle and very pleasant to the ear. IMO, the fifth protector, opened her eyes, which were as sharp as knives. However, she shook her head. Her gaze pierced through the sky and looked straight at the battle in the starry sky. The immortal spirit empress frowned. The situation was good for the immortal spirit divine dynasty. Although the situation was good for the immortal spirit divine dynasty, she still did not dare to relax. There was a great crisis lingering in her mind. What exactly is it? Looking at the god kings and soul demons fighting fiercely, the empress's heart felt a little heavy. Suddenly, the pupils on the empress's beautiful face constricted in an instant. No, something must be wrong. Where's Soul 13? Where's the dangerous Soul 13 that old man, Xia Yuha, mentioned? The empress's heart skipped a beat. From beginning to end, Soul 13 had never shown up. This was very unreasonable. Could he have gone to Xia Yuha's side? Just as the empress was having mixed feelings, her mind flickered. She raised her slender hand. In front of her hand, there was a formation flickering with brilliance. But inside the array, an old, towering figure emerged. The soul demons have invaded the Xia divine dynasty's capital. But Soul 13 is not here. He's probably with you. Be careful. The Xia divine emperor's shadow emerged in the array. Oh, the empress paused. Suddenly, a feeling of fear bloomed in her heart. She jerked her head up and looked into the distance. There, the void next to a protector who was fighting the soul demons was torn apart. An almost silver arm stretched out of it. It was a protector of a top-grade god king. The sense of crisis in his heart soared. A knife light swept out and slashed at the arm. The power of the law exploded all over the sky. However, the protector's powerful attack was unable to cut through the arm at all. Splurt! The silver arm pierced the female protector's body. Buzz! The protector let out a miserable howl. Her body shrank at a rate visible to the naked eye, and eventually, she turned into a pile of bones and shattered in the starry sky. A top-grade god king was killed in an instant. The empress's eyes turned red. She knew that Soul 13 had appeared. A burst of cold laughter rang out. The next moment, in midair, Soul 13's figure slowly walked out. At this moment, he no longer looked like the Titan divine emperor. Silver wings grew out of his back, and his body was covered with scarlet patterns. His terrible aura seemed to be about to stir up a storm. Around him, there seemed to be a terrible aura swirling around him like a blade. Some of the god kings who were too close could not even resist. They were killed by the aura and turned into bloody foams. The momentum of the soul demon army soared. The ancient beasts swept their tails, and one phoenix after another let out miserable cries as they were crushed. The empress of immortal spirit, Soul 13, glanced greedily at the empress. Suddenly, he thought of something. His scarlet eyes turned and looked at the immortal spirit divine dynasty's home planet. It was as if he was looking through the stars and the palace. Greed exploded out of his eyes. Sitting cross-legged in the palace, M.O. felt a terrible pressure descend. She jerked up from the ground and straightened her body like a spear, trying to resist the aura. Slash, but soon, she coughed up a mouthful of blood and took a few steps back in horror. Unbelievable. Just a look is enough to make me vomit blood. What kind of terrible existence is this? M.O. quickly escort Her Highness out of the immortal spirit divine dynasty. There's a teleportation array behind the palace. Activate it, and take Her Highness to the Xia divine dynasty's capital. Remember, don't let Her Highness fall into the hands of the soul demons. Her Highness is the hope of mankind. Her Highness, who has comprehended four supreme laws of the universe, is the ultimate hope of mankind. Quick, escort Her Highness out of here. The anxious voice of the immortal spirit empress rang in Amo's ears. Amo's pupils constricted. The empress actually told me to retreat. Is the situation already so bad? She thought of the look that fell from the sky just now. Amo's heart was instantly shrouded in gloom. Without hesitation, she turned her head and looked behind the curtain. Her Highness, let's go. The empress let out a long cry. Her crown exploded, and her battle robe flapped noisily. The strength of a god emperor completely exploded out. Like a golden figure, she caused the spiritual energy in the starry sky to boil. In the distance, Soul 13 looked at her with a sneer. Silver light burst out of his body. He raised a hand, and a dark purple ball of dark energy was gathering in his palm. The next moment, he raised his hand again. Then, he flicked his fingers, which looked like the claw of a savage beast. Suddenly, the dark purple ball tore through the void and shot towards the queen of the immortal spirit empress. Roar! The soul demon roared. His true form kept twisting and changing, and his scarlet eyes were bursting with extreme excitement. Heaven and earth changed colors. Even the void seemed to have frozen. In the Xiai Divine Dynasty's capital, everyone was shivering, except for Bu Fong and Yu, who were facing the soul demon on the top of the Luo family skyscraper. You looked at Bu Fong. Looking at Bu Fong, she removed the ladle from her waist. Is Bu Fong going to fight the soul demon with the ladle? Bu Fong's fighting style is always so unexpected. The soul demon pounced. Bu Fong breathed a sigh of relief. His vermilion robe flapped noisily. Then, with the ladle in one hand, he took a step forward. His body seemed to be walking on an invisible staircase, walking step by step toward the void. As everyone watched, he headed toward the soul demon. The soul demon's roar made everyone's heart palpitate. As everyone watched, Bu Fong grabbed the ladle and swung it at the soul demon. This was the first time they saw someone fight with a ladle. Even if you're a chef, you should at least use a kitchen knife. A kitchen knife is more lethal, isn't it? If you don't use a kitchen knife, you should use a wok. Why are you using a ladle? Are you kidding me? The crowd was a little puzzled. However, they could only watch. The keeper sneered as he watched Bu Fong wave a ladle at him. Sure enough, as Soul 13 had said, this stinky chef had run out of tricks. He could not believe that he was going to fight him with a ladle. He was the keeper, a soul demon who was only half a step away from becoming a soul overlord. How could a broken ladle knock him to death? Stinky chef, die! The soul demon roared, his voice shaking the sky. Outside the sky, the Xiai Divine Emperor clutched his chest, his pupils constricting. Many experts were also watching. It was too late for them to block the soul demon now. Bu Fong held the ladle in his hand and weighed it in his hand. This was the first time he used a ladle, and he hoped it would not disappoint him. After all, it was a complete god of cooking set. Rumble. The ladle swept out. It was simple and unadorned, with nothing special about it. Under the soul demon's monstrous power, the ladle seemed to be on the verge of breaking. Finally, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the ladle collided with the soul demon. The ladle, it landed lightly on the head of the soul demon's true form. There was no earth-shattering collision, no terrible storm. It was like a bubble puff. The moment the keeper touched the ladle, he felt his vision blur. It was as if a colossal savage beast was opening its mouth at him. At that moment, he thought the end of the world had come. He thought he was facing a soul overlord. Then like a bubble it burst. The keeper's true form, which was approaching menacingly with an incomparably fierce killing intent, was smashed by the ladle. It was smashed by the ladle. All that was left was a black, bead-like ball of light, which was absorbed by the ladle. Bu Fong hovered in midair, his vermilion robe fluttering. Holding the ladle, Bu Fong looked at it with a strange expression. When he knocked the soul demon to pieces, Bu Fong's eyes widened. Bu Fong seemed to hear a burp. Did Qilin swallow that soul demon? He's indeed a mighty, almighty expert. With a shake of his finger, the ladle began to spin. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched slightly as he looked into the distance. With a ladle in hand, the world is mine. Chapter 1563. How could a ladle be so strong? Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched the soul demon disappear like a bubble. All of them had strange expressions on their faces. They didn't know what to say, mainly because this result was somewhat out of their expectations. The soul demon's power was so terrible that it caused heaven and earth to dim. However, before he could even land, he was smashed to death by Bu Fong's ladle. With a ladle in hand, the world is mine. How could he be so domineering? However, there was something strange about his words. If the ladle was replaced by a knife or a sword, no one would find it strange. But with a ladle, their hearts did not waver, and they even wanted to laugh. Fiddling with the ladle, Bu Fong was very calm. Everything was under his control. The ladle was, after all, a complete god of cooking set. With Qilin guarding it, it was a piece of cake for him to deal with the soul demon. As the crowd's breathing became more and more rapid, Bu Fong slowly descended from the sky and landed on the top of the Luo family skyscraper. He spun the ladle in his hand, then hung it on Bu Fong's waist again. You looked at Bu Fong with a strange expression. Sure enough, he's still the familiar Bu Fong. He can even unleash a great power with a ladle. The shy divine emperor breathed a sigh of relief. All his worries about Bu Fong had disappeared. The war was still going on, but there should be no suspense about the outcome of the next battle. After all, with two top-numbered soul demons gone, the divine emperors would not cause too much trouble for the remaining soul demons. The soul demons did not send too many troops to the Xiai divine dynasty. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The body of the divine emperor, who was seriously injured by a soul demon's self-explosion, had begun to slowly recover. After all, he was a divine emperor, so his recovery ability was naturally strong. The ancient beasts lay across the starry sky. The faces of the soul demons controlling them flickered when they saw the fall of two top-numbered soul demons. The old Xiai divine emperor had seriously injured his opponents with the self-explosion of a top soul demon. The first mission was considered completed for the time being, but the second mission, which was to seriously injure the chef, had failed. Was that chef so awesome? Retreat. The soul demon's scarlet eyes flashed, and a strange fluctuation spread out. He wanted the soul demons to retreat. However, the Xiai divine emperor would not let these soul demons retreat so easily. At the very least, he had to kill 3 ancient beasts. In the future, when they fought against the soul demons, it would be better to have one less of them. The divine emperor stepped into the air. Although he had lost the divine emperor's seal, his battle intent did not weaken at all. He punched out, and behind him, there seemed to be an indomitable giant figure. The figure deduced a fist technique and punched out, seeming to shake the galaxy. Then, he flew toward a huge ancient soul demon. Ancient soul beasts were powerful weapons of war, but they were still not as powerful as god emperors. Bang! The divine emperor's punch shattered the beast's tail, causing green blood to gush out and splatter across the starry sky. The ancient soul demon roared and whimpered in pain. Without the slightest hesitation, the soul demon on his back let out a long howl and left. The divine emperor's eyes were sharp as he punched again and again. In the blink of an eye, he smashed the huge ancient beast into pieces. Just like that, a soul demon that was as huge as a planet was smashed to pieces and fell from the starry sky. Its huge body lay on the ground, lifeless and turning into cosmic dust. The divine emperor's eyes were sharp. He kept charging and killing. The morale of the divine dynasty's experts soared. Without a doubt, they had won this war. The soul demons retreated. They fled into the depths of the starry sky in a sorry state. The bone warship was shattered, and the ancient beast was captured. The divine dynasty's experts, who had won a great victory, brandished their weapons in the starry sky and roared. The divine dynasty will win. The Xiai divine emperor radiated a dazzling light. He was the backbone of everyone. Rumble. The experts returned to the starry sky one after another. The ancient beast was captured, and so were the savage beasts that could destroy divine artifacts. When the Divine Dynasty's experts returned from the starry sky with the huge ancient beast in their hands, the whole Divine Dynasty burst into deafening cheers. To them, they were lucky to have won the war. They dared not to imagine what would happen to them if they lost the war. The ancient beast was simply too huge. It was imprisoned in a spatial prison by a god-king expert who was good at the law of space. This kind of war beast was definitely a nightmare for mankind. On the top floor of the Luo family's skyscraper, Bu Fong couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth as he watched the shy Divine Dynasty's experts return triumphantly. He clasped his hands behind his back and turned around. However, as soon as he did, he froze. The Titan Crown Prince looked at the cheering Xiaoyi residents with a complicated expression, his heart filled with mixed feelings. He, too, wished he could see the Titan Divine Dynasty's experts cheering like this. Unfortunately, there was no chance for that. The Titan Divine Dynasty was destroyed, and it had become a thing of the past. However, he was still very happy to see the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty's experts win the war. The Titan Crown Prince wiped away the tears at the corner of his eyes and let out a deep breath. The Xiaoyi Crown Prince descended. He looked at Bu Fong in bewilderment. He was a King Crown Prince, yet he was defeated by a bowl of stinky tofu. He wanted to ask Bu Fong about it now. However, Bu Fong didn't tell him too much. The stinky tofu was a special dish he had developed after his return to deal with these soul demons. He shook his hand. A bowl of stinky tofu appeared again, and he handed it to the Xiaoyi Crown Prince. "Don't ask. Just eat it," Bu Fong said. The Crown Prince's face froze, and he looked at Bu Fong in confusion. His eyes widened, and they seemed to be talking to him. "Why is this thing so stinky? I'm a noble person, so why would I eat it?" A few moments later, "What the CK? It smells so good. The texture doesn't match the taste at all. I get it. The more delicious something is, the more nightmare it is for soul demons. So that's how it is. Owner Bu, you really are a genius." The Crown Prince squatted in a corner of the roof with a bowl of stinky tofu in his hand, eating happily. His mouth was covered with grease. The Titan Crown Prince had recovered from his melancholy. He gave a Xiaoyi Crown Prince a disgusted look, who said he didn't want the stinky tofu, but was eating happily. "I can't believe this shameless guy is actually a Crown Prince. Owner Bu, can you mass-produce it? When the soul demons attack, we can use this stinky tofu to give them a head-on blow and let them know why stinky tofu is so smelly," said the Crown Prince. He had finished the bowl of stinky tofu. He ate it cleanly, leaving not even a bit of residue behind. "Mass-produce it?" Bu Fong paused. He glanced at the Crown Prince and said, "You can come to the restaurant to buy it. Tomorrow, the restaurant will launch a new dish, stinky tofu." The Crown Prince's eyes lit up in an instant. Then he shot into the distance with the bowl in his hand. He needed to tell his father about this news. At that time, he would organize all the experts of the Divine Dynasty to come to Owner Bu's place to buy stinky tofu. In the face of the soul demons, they would completely crush them. Bu Fong's face turned a little black as he watched the Xiaoyi Crown Prince disappear into the distance. This guy, why didn't he leave the bowl behind? Does the bowl cost nothing? In the Divine Dynasty's imperial palace, the Xiaoyi Divine Emperor's face was pale. The soul demons had achieved their goal in this battle. They had seriously wounded him. Of course, for the soul demons, it was also a terrible defeat and loss. The number of ancient beasts was limited, and losing 3 at once was a huge blow to the soul demons. Sitting on the throne, the Xiaoyi Divine Emperor tapped his finger on it. He was waiting for news from the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty. There was no doubt that the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty's battlefield was absolutely tragic. Earlier, he had told the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty about Soul 13. But halfway through, the news came to an abrupt halt. This worried him a little. Once the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty fell, the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty would be the only line of defense left in the entire chaotic universe. And after devouring the entire immortal spirit divine dynasty, the soul demon's power will become unimaginably strong. The shy divine emperor sighed. At this moment, the shy crown prince flew into the palace. He landed in the palace and told the divine emperor the news he had received from Bufang. It was definitely good news that the divine emperor had the means to deal with the soul demons. When the crown prince handed the shy divine emperor a bowl that emitted a foul smell, the divine emperor almost slapped him to death. Fortunately, the crown prince explained in time. Only then did the divine emperor believe him skeptically. After all, the crown prince could not deceive him with such a thing. Very good. Pass down my order. All experts in the capital are to go to Owner Boo's restaurant to buy stinky tofu, the divine emperor said. With the divine emperor's order, it was easy to imagine how popular Bufang's restaurant would become. Bufang's turnover would certainly increase tremendously as well. After all, this was an official recommendation. Once the divine emperor's order appeared, the crown prince also showed a look of joy. Stinky tofu might not have a great impact on numbered soul demons, but at least it had an impact on them. It was definitely a sharp weapon for those below numbered soul demons. If a bowl of stinky tofu was thrown out, all the soul demons would be incinerated. What a pity for that delicious, stinky tofu. The crown prince stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. He was hesitating whether he should buy a few bowls first and eat to his heart's content. Suddenly, the divine emperor's expression changed. Oh, the crown prince paused and looked at the divine emperor doubtfully. There, the divine emperor's pupils constricted. With a thought in his mind, he raised his hand and waved it. An array immediately emerged in front of him. The array rotated, and a message came out of it. It was an array to contact the immortal spirit divine dynasty. The shy divine emperor had waited for so long, and finally there was a message. He wondered what the outcome of the war would be. The crown prince recovered from the delicious taste of the stinky tofu and turned to look at the array. The immortal spirit divine dynasty? I wonder what good news it will bring. As the array rotated, a bright light soared into the sky. Then, it projected a broken scene. Broken fences, broken walls, broken bricks, drifting bones, flowing God's blood. The crown prince sucked in a cold breath, and a look of horror came into his eyes. The shy divine emperor's face was very serious. Suddenly, a palm stained with blood appeared in the scene. The palm was slender and beautiful, and there was no doubt that it belonged to a woman. However, the appearance of the hand made the shy divine emperor and the crown prince's hearts skip a beat. The scene spun. Finally, a pale, bloodless face was revealed. It was a woman with disheveled hair and a very sorry figure. The empress of a mortal spirit. Both the shy divine emperor and the crown prince recognized her. At this moment, the empress looked extremely pitiful. Cough, cough, cough. The empress coughed up blood. Her phoenix cry bow had been broken in two. Her battle robe was also torn, revealing her fair skin. However, the alluring scene made the shy father and son unable to have any romantic thoughts, because this scene represented a cruel reality. The immortal spirit, divine dynasty, is finished. The empress coughed up blood and said, her eyes filled with grief and despair. Soul 13 is about to evolve into a heaven god. The only hope of the chaotic universe is shy. The empress coughed up blood with every sentence she spoke. Behind her, rumbling filled the air as countless experts of the immortal spirit divine dynasty were turned into skeletons and devoured by the soul demons. Their miserable howls filled the ears. Suddenly, the empress perked up as if she was recovering her strength before death. I've arranged for the crown princess of the immortal spirit divine dynasty to go to the shy divine dynasty. You must save her. She is the hope of mankind and the chaotic universe. The empress of the immortal spirit empress grasped the formation with hope, her eyes shining brightly. Rumble. Suddenly, a silver beast claw slammed down. With a slapping sound, it grabbed the empress's head. He slowly lifted up the queen of immortal spirit. Everything in the array began to blur. He. Reinforcements? It's useless. Soon, the Xiai divine dynasty will follow in the footsteps of the immortal spirit divine dynasty. A cold voice rang out. The pupils of the Xiai father and son constricted. A face appeared in the image of the formation. It was a silver face covered with silver insect scales and scarlet barbaric glyphs. The outline of the Titan divine emperor's face could still be vaguely seen. The terrible aura emanating from it almost suffocated the two of them. Soul 13. The Xiai father and son sucked in their breaths. The empress was struggling in the image. The next moment, she let out a determined roar, and her body exploded. The image on the formation shuddered for a moment before disappearing. There was a sad look in the Xiai divine emperor's eyes. His body trembled as he took a few steps back and sat down on the throne. He felt much older in an instant. The immortal spirit divine dynasty has fallen. The crown prince's body trembled violently. The look in Soul 13's eyes made him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. How could he defeat an existence like that? Tell Gold Armor to search the nearby teleportation arrays. We must bring the crown princess of the immortal spirit divine dynasty back to the divine dynasty unscathed. The divine emperor said wearily. Outside the palace, Gold Armor took the order, turned into a beam of golden light, and sped away with the Gold Armor guards. In the Luo family's skyscraper, in the restaurant on the top floor, sitting in a recliner, he narrowed his eyes and looked up at the bleeding sky, exhaling slightly. Just as he was about to fall asleep, Bu Fong's eyes snapped open. The system's solemn voice resounded in his mind. Chapter 1564. The system's serious voice rang out in Bu Fong's head. It made Bu Fong's eyes, which were about to close, open slightly. Oh, Bu Fong seemed a little puzzled. He did not expect the system to speak at this time. Attention, host. A temporary task has been issued. Please help the crown princess of the immortal spirit divine dynasty escape from the soul demon's pursuit. Temporary task reward. One god of cooking's divine power, liquid drop. The system said seriously. That gave Bu Fong pause. His eyes, which had been closed, were wide open. The temporary task issued by the system this time was very interesting. The mission this time was actually to save someone. Unfortunately, the reward was not a fruit of law. He was one fruit of law away from comprehending the fifth supreme law of the universe. And then he would be perfect. The crown princess of the immortal spirit divine dynasty? Why is she being hunted by soul demons? How could the empress of the immortal spirit divine dynasty allow her crown princess to be hunted? Suddenly, Bu Fong seemed to think of something. He straightened his body, which had been lying lazily, and sucked in a cold breath. Could it be? Unless the empress of the immortal spirit divine dynasty could no longer protect the crown princess, she would not be hunted. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Just as Bu Fong was pondering, suddenly the sound of something piercing through the air rang out from the sky. Bu Fong frowned. He looked up at Gold Armor, who was shooting across the sky. Gold Armor seemed to sense Bu Fong's gaze, so he looked over and nodded at Bu Fong. The next moment, he did not linger for long. Instead, he led the army and continued to shoot into the distance. It seems that something terrible has happened. What is it? Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. He no longer had the mood to rest. The Titan Crown Prince had returned to the restaurant to practice his cooking skills. His hatred of the soul demons had all turned into motivation for him to practice cooking. Yu, on the other hand, was walking lazily. Lord Go was lying under the Path Understanding tree, exuding a profound aura as he breathed. Meanwhile, Hades Era was chatting with Luo Sanyang's best friends in the restaurant. The current Hades Era was known as the Friend of Women. He was a good friend of the noble women in the capital. Bu Fong stood up, and Yu's gaze immediately fell on him. She seemed to have discovered something different about Bu Fong. Yu's eyes lit up. Where are you going? Bring me along. You said. Bufong was stunned and hesitated whether he should bring along. You blinked. Then, with a shake of her hand, a pitch-black netherworld ship appeared. The underworld ship has been repaired. Where do you want to go? I'll take you there. Nethery said seriously. She was one of the people who owned ships. Staying in the restaurant was really boring. I really want to find something exciting to do. Looking at Yu's determined look, Bufong's mouth twitched. Looking at the repaired netherworld ship, Bufong nodded slightly. You had asked Hades' era to contact his noble women friends in the Divine Dynasty and ask the best warship designers to upgrade and improve it. The current netherworld ship could be considered a top-grade warship. Not only was its interior luxurious, but its power was also extraordinary. Perhaps this was all that Hades' era could do. Bufong thought about the system's mission. Saving the crown princess should not be too troublesome. In that case, he would let you go with him. After getting Bufong's approval, Yu narrowed her eyes. She leaped up and jumped onto the netherworld ship. Little Hu jumped off Bufong's shoulder and landed on the netherworld ship, jumping up and down. There's no hurry. Let me make a few bowls of stinky tofu first, Bufong said faintly, looking at Yu, who could not wait any longer. After saying that, he turned and walked toward the kitchen. The atmosphere in the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty had changed. It had obviously become a little tense and sharp. Soldiers could be seen flying in the sky, and everyone's eyes were full of vigilance. The Xiaoyi Divine Emperor had strengthened the security, which puzzled everyone. After all, he had just won a great victory, and he should not be in such a mood. His attitude made people feel as if he had not won a great victory, but had suffered a great defeat. The crowd's puzzlement did not stop the Divine Emperor from giving out his order. All the aristocratic families moved out and turned into a defensive force to protect the capital. The Divine Emperor's order was also given out. Buy Bufong's stinky tofu from the restaurant tomorrow. The order puzzled many people, but when the Crown Prince announced the effect of stinky tofu, the whole Divine Dynasty boiled over. It was the nemesis of the soul demons. This made many people very excited. It was good news for everyone that they could find a way to restrain the soul demons. For a moment, many aristocratic families in the Divine Dynasty were in a frenzy. Everyone sent their experts to the restaurant to buy stinky tofu. The restaurant was not open yet, but the queue was already very long. Not only the aristocratic families, but some ordinary experts also went to the restaurant. After all, one could buy stinky tofu as long as they had source stones. The threshold was very low. Many people wanted to try the stinky tofu that could restrain the soul demons. Of course, some people thought this behavior was ridiculous. Stinky tofu could restrain the soul demons? Could they kill the soul demons with the stench of stinky tofu? Many people snorted. They did not take the Divine Emperor's order seriously. However, most people were still eager to take action. After all, they did not think the Divine Emperor would deceive them. In the Dragon Valley, at this moment, the Dragon Valley had already turned into a battlefield. Dragon corpses floated in the starry sky. There were also the corpses of five-clawed divine dragons. Five-clawed divine dragons were the top existences among the dragons, and their strength was no weaker than that of high-grade god kings. The whole great world was exuding a miserable aura. The Dragon Valley had fallen. The upper echelons of the dragons had retreated to the other great worlds, and even many experts in the Dragon Valley had moved to the capital of the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty to avoid being wiped out by the soul demons. At the entrance of the Dragon Valley, the void was twisting. The light of an array was surging. In the next moment, two figures rapidly flew out from the formation. Almo's face was pale. There was a look of determination in her eyes. She took the Crown Princess's hand and guarded her. Although she was sad, she told herself that she needed to be strong. The Crown Princess still needed her to protect her. Crown Princess, let's go. We'll be safe when we reach the capital of the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty. Imo suppressed the grief in her heart. The Empress had asked her to take the Crown Princess and flee. What did this mean? It meant that the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty might not be able to withstand the soul demon's attack. The crown princess, wearing a veil, nodded obediently. She had always been very obedient. Whether it was the empress or the ministers of the divine dynasty, they all liked her very much. It was just that she might be a little too weak. This was not a good thing. IMO glanced at the soft crown princess and sighed inwardly. Can a crown princess with such a temperament really carry the hope of mankind? She felt a little uncertain. But the crown princess's talent is really amazing. In a short time, she has comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. It's like she's using a cheat code. Is she the chosen one? I really envy her for comprehending the supreme laws of the universe as easily as drinking water. Rumble. Amo's aura enveloped the crown princess. With a wave of her hand, an ancient warship immediately appeared. The warship streaked across the sky and sped toward the Shai Divine Dynasty's capital. This was the Dragon Valley, but it had still fallen. It was still very dangerous for them. The dragon corpses floating around them and the dark aura that pervaded the air made Amo's heart sink. All these made Amo's heart sink. The dragons, a major clan in the chaotic universe that was not weaker than the phoenix nest, had fallen into such a miserable state. Even the Dragon Valley had been destroyed. The soul demons were really a disaster. At this moment, Amo suddenly felt sad and angry. She knew there were heaven gods in the chaotic universe, but why hadn't they appeared after such a disaster? What were those lofty heaven gods, who represented the ultimate supreme laws of the universe, doing? The Dragon Valley had been destroyed. It was a scene of devastation, with broken buildings, dragon corpses, drifting dragon blood, and cracked dragon scales. Everything was miserable. However, Amo did not dare to stop. Suddenly, the Dragon Valley down below abruptly exploded. A pitch-black dragon flew out of it at high speed. It had 5 claws, and its scales gleamed with a black luster. Its eyes were scarlet, and it looked like the expert of the Titan Divine Dynasty who had been possessed, a dragon-type soul demon. IMO breathed heavily. Her divine sense surged as she steered the warship and began to move at high speed. She did not dare to continue fighting because she could already feel a crisis looming over them. Behind them, the soul demons were chasing them. The crown princess had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe, and for soul demons, she was simply a delicacy and a great tonic. How could she dare to stop? Roar! A dragon roar rang out. Its scarlet eyes were bursting with ferocity. Black dragon breath spewed out of its mouth toward the warship. The warship was rocked by the breath, and even the defensive arrays outside were corroded. IMO caught a glimpse of the soul demon dragon's claws. It had 5 claws, and it was a 5-clawed divine dragon whose body had been possessed. It was comparable to a top-grade god king. As a protector of the immortal spirit divine dynasty, IMO also possessed the strength of a top-grade god king. Her fighting prowess was no weaker than this 5-clawed divine dragon, but she did not dare to continue fighting. A ripping sound rang out. The warship moved, drifted, and dodged the dragon breath in all kinds of ways. Half of the divine dragon's body was sealed in the Dragon Valley. It kept struggling. The already dilapidated Dragon Valley began to churn. Roar! The divine dragon roared and kept slapping its claws down, cracking the ground as it struggled out of it. Saliva dripped from its mouth as it stared at the warship with great greed and desire. It smelled delicious food. Sweat broke out on Amo's forehead. Bam! A dragon claw slapped down. The warship was immediately slapped, and half of the warship collapsed. The warship began to lose control in the air, and it continuously spun. Amo's face was pale. The next moment, she gritted her teeth. She pulled the crown princess out of the warship and was about to abandon it. Roar! One dragon after another flew out of the Dragon Valley, shrouded in black smoke. They were all soul demon dragons. Soul demon dragons that had just been born. Damn it! IMO flew into a rage. She pulled the crown princess, unleashed her boundless aura, and shot into the distance, trying to escape. However, the void was torn apart. In front of them, A bone warship tore through the void and appeared, blocking their way. On the bone warship, soul demons stood coldly, staring at them with scarlet eyes. A terrible aura pervaded the air. The soul demons grinned hideously. Imo pulled the crown princess, feeling somewhat desperate as they were surrounded. Before them was a numbered soul demon. Behind them was a five-clawed soul demon dragon. This is a hopeless situation. Mo's heart was trembling. She was a little sad that she could not protect the crown princess. She had failed the empress. The crown princess, who was wearing a veil, seemed to feel Mo's grief. She reached out a hand and gently patted Imo on the shoulder, comforting her. What a good crown princess. It's a pity that she will become food for these soul demons. Mo's heart ached. Roar. A cold dragon roar rang out, assaulting their eardrums. The crown princess's body was trembling slightly. She seemed to know her fate. She sighed. From the moment she was discovered by the empress to the moment she became the brightest genius in the chaotic universe, she felt like she was dreaming. Although the empress had always said that she was the most exceptional genius, she knew that she was not. There was someone in this world who was even more exceptional than her. It was a pity that she had not seen him for a long time. Perhaps she would die here today. It was a pity that she would not be able to see him again. On the bone warship, the soul demon sneered, looking greedily and coldly at the two people who were surrounded. They liked to feel the despair of humans. Kill them. Leave that veiled woman alive. Lord Soul Overlord wants her. A numbered soul demon said greedily from the bone warship. Yes, they had already called Soul 13 Soul Overlord. Although he had not yet advanced to the Soul Overlord realm, he was only a hair's breadth away from it. Roar! The soul demon dragon roared, and its claws fell in an instant. The numbered soul demon unleashed a burst of black smoke and shot over like a bolt of black lightning. Imo roared. Her aura was rising steadily. She could not sit still and wait for death. Fight! Rumble! Their auras collided, and energy surged. Imo collided with several numbered soul demons and the soul demon dragon, and her body was instantly torn apart. Her body burst open everywhere, and blood flowed everywhere. She was seriously injured with just one blow. She wanted to carve out a path of blood, but now it seemed impossible. She landed back at the crown princess's side. Blood was trickling from the corner of her mouth, and her body was torn and bleeding. Your Highness, I'm sorry. Imo closed her eyes in despair. The soul demons grinned hideously. The soul demon dragon roared as well. Then it flew toward the crown princess and Imo. The crown princess sighed, patted Imo on the shoulder, and closed her eyes. Suddenly, a creaking sound rang out. The void in front of them was torn apart. Then a black warship slowly sailed out of it. At the prow of the ship stood a beautiful green-haired woman in a black dress. On her shoulder was a little hoofed fox with fur as white as snow, its 9 tails wagging slowly. Next to the woman was a thin man. A thin man slowly walked out of the cabin, looking as if he had not woken up yet. The crown princess seemed to sense something. She opened her eyes and looked at him in confusion. Her eyes were instantly attracted by the Netherworld ship. She opened her mouth wide. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.